Hey, hey, we up. Just got knocked out again as we're alive. Well, that's no fun. Scott is having all sorts of camera issues. There you are. Hey, look at that.
It works now.
At least.
That was strange.
Weird. Computers are mysterious.
Almost as mysterious as people, but not quite.
I always say that computers are nothing more than millions of on-off switches lining up in the right order. And sometimes they don't line up in the right order.
That's what electrical circuit really is, too. Yeah.
That's all. Sometimes it just, everything doesn't line up. Law of averages says it so.
Yes, indeed. Oh, that was bizarre.
Yeah. Scott just had trouble getting his camera working and staying on at all. Did you get any weather down there where you are?
No, it's just been raining the past few days, but it's been warmer than normal. It's got up in the 60s several times.
Yeah, got up in the 60s, I think, on Wednesday.
Yeah,
but then last night we had snow, but around here was ice.
Yeah, it got cold last night. It got really foggy, but other than that, nothing happened.
I don't know how much snow we had, but it ended up being 2 inches of ice out of my driveway. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I'm not fond of ice.
It's no fun.
Ice in the drink is good. Ice on the driveway, not so good.
Luckily, in the afternoon, it warmed up till about 40, 43. Right. And I got on the John Deere with the plow on front of it and chopped up all that ice. So I would hated to have to do that by hand with a shovel. Oof.
So if a farmer's girlfriend leaves him, does he end up getting a John Deere letter?
He sure does. Dear John Deere.
Most people aren't going to get that. And they're better off for it.
Dun, dun, dun. Nothing to get here. Nothing to get. Just keep moving on.
I haven't seen a single piece of comics-related news all week.
No?
Not one.
No. I'm trying to think if I've seen any comic-related. There has not been a lot of comic-related news.
Granted, I didn't exactly go out of my way looking for it either.
Except I saw something on Twitter just before I got on here. I don't know who it was. Iceman and Mr. Freeze, how you doing? Mind the comics. I saw something that was like someone said Marvel announced their next omnibus. The person was like, if you gave me 1,000 guesses, I would have never got it.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah, I know what it is, yeah. And then they said, maybe my kids will like it. That was the only hint.
The kids will. Is it Power Pack?
No.
More obscure than Power Pack?
I think it's less. See, I don't know how to judge the obscurity of it.
Is it planetary?
No, it's not that. See, okay. It might be considered. It might be considered really mainstream and not obscure at all, or it might not be. It would be considered obscure to you and me, but not to a Marvel kid in the 90s.
But it's a Marvel book.
Yeah, Marvel Omnibus. Yeah,
from the 90s.
Right. And I wouldn't have guessed it either. I barely knew these comics existed.
I give up.
It's the X-Men animated series Adaptations.
You're absolutely right. I never would have guessed that.
I think it was called X-Men Adventures, was that one. Like I said, technically that's not obscure because probably more people saw the animated series than read the comic.
Yeah, that's true.
But as a comic goes, it's pretty.
I didn't even know they had a adaptation of the animated series. So
I only knew because I was working at Marvel at the time, I would imagine.
Gotcha.
So I probably worked on it a little bit, yeah. And usually anything that's an adaptation for kids of anime is called Adventures at the end for Marvel and DC. But yeah, I wouldn't. I forgot those existed. But I guess it's because I think those are all on Netflix now, and they're doing a new version of it.
Gotcha.
Squirrel Girl, no.
I saw that Hulu ordered 17 more episodes of Futurama.
Oh, okay. I was never a Futurama fan. I haven't
I
watched
love
it a whole lot.
I like Futurama quite a bit. I probably like it better than The Simpsons.
Yeah. I never got into. Watched it a little bit here and there.
All right.
It was okay, but just never got into it.
No.
Never got into it. But yeah, that was the one. I'm trying to see if I read any other comic news this week. Not really.
I can't remember reading any comics news at all. I mean, usually just filters down by osmosis. But
there was no Tempest in a Teapot like the George Perez Jla Avengers of last week.
Right.
And there was one the week before that too. I can't remember the Tempest in a Teapot that week.
No.
Well, let's see. What was the comic? Yeah, I can't think of. The comic news for me was I actually bought a comic. I bought some back issues. Shock of all shocks.
Really?
Because I've been following Ralph Reese on Facebook.
Right. I follow him too.
And he posted a link to an interview with Howard Chaykin that was done by his local PBS station, I think it was.
Don't remember seeing that. I'll have to go look for it.
You know, it was a recent link, so it was pretty cool. So it
was
just
a recent interview, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
A half an hour interview with Howard Chaykin, always good.
Gotcha.
How long for a cap cover with Putin being punched? Good question. That might be too controversial for Marvel. I don't know if they do that. Would Disney allow such a thing?
Oh, I never even thought about that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, interview with Howard Chaykin. Throughout the somewhere near the end of the interview, he mentioned the series he did with Jose Garcia Lopez. Mm-hmm. It turned out to be 1990, 1991. That was a long time ago. Called Twilight.
Yeah, I have that.
I have a page of original art from it. Mm-hmm. About a decade ago, on eBay came up a page. You know, I would occasionally buy. I haven't bought it much in a while, but I would occasionally buy original art.
Right.
And a page of Jose Garcia Lopez art came up from that. Mm-hmm. And I ended up buying it. It probably wasn't that expensive, somewhere between $100 and $200, I would guess.
And this was what, in the 90s when you bought it?
No, it was about 10 years ago. It was around 2010, I would guess.
Oh, that's cheap.
Yes, cheap, but it's from a Jose Garcia Lopez book that's not Batman and Superman. And so
even so, that's still cheap.
Yeah, you're right. It was. That's why I bought it, because it was not expensive. Yeah, it is a really nice page, and it's oversized too. It's like graphic novel sized. But Chaykin started talking. I don't know why it came up. Jose Garcia Lopez's name came up, and Chaykin started talking about that book. Mm-hmm. And he was like, and he was talking about how he just never did much superhero stuff, and so he doesn't have a big fan base like the superhero guys do, and he doesn't really like superheroes. And he mentioned that book and how great Jose Garcia Lopez was, and how he got accused of raping all the characters in that book. And I was like, you know what? I should buy that series. I mean, I've always said I should, because I have a page of original art, but I've never read it.
I've read part of it. I haven't read all of it.
And though he said he did layouts for it too, which in reading it, I'm like, yeah, these look like Howard Chaykin layouts. So he's not credited. I mean, Jose Garcia Lopez is credited with all the art in it. But it looks to me like Howard Chaykin layouts, especially with all those. Howard Chaykin loves to do a panel like this of someone's face talking. That's one of his go-to panels.
I remember Archie Goodwin used to do a lot of layouts. I don't know if you ever got many credits for those or not, but he used to lay out a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm. But it's here. Let me show you the 3 issues, and these are long. I mean, it's
Yeah, they've got nice covers.
Yeah, they got nice cut. A little brown. I guess they're supposed to be gold.
That's about the color that they're supposed to be.
Yeah, they're not supposed. They're supposed to be. Yeah, they look like some kind of granite or something. Book 1.
Right.
And there's some nice. I guess is this Jose Garcia Lopez? Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got JLGL. And they cost me, I think, altogether with shipping, there's 2. Mm-hmm. Altogether with shipping was $15, so $5 an issue.
I got those for $1 each.
Yeah, I'm sure you can find them in the dollar bin.
Yeah.
Oh, they originally cost $5 an issue.
Yeah, he's got some really nice covers. It reminds me a little bit of Virgil Finlay in there.
Yeah, and I don't think I've seen Jose Garcia Lopez. Looks like he's using some charcoal.
Yeah, he's got some shading going on that he doesn't normally use.
Yeah, he doesn't use these. Look not like they don't look like typical Jose Garcia Lopez.
No, they don't.
I'm used to Jose Garcia Lopez art being very sort of smooth and with fluid lines.
Yeah, that one's got a lot of texture to it.
Yeah, a lot of texture. And it really reminds me of European work. And so you've never read the whole thing?
I've read part. No, I've just flipped through them. I've read part.
Which I can understand. Because these take a long time to read.
Gotcha.
Each one is 48 pages. So it's really 6 standard comics. It's short of 150, a little short of 150 pages.
I just remember flipping through it. There were a lot of characters that I didn't recognize.
I didn't recognize any of them. I mean, for them saying that he raped the characters, the only one I even knew the name of was Tommy Tomorrow.
Right.
Who I don't even know who that is. I just know the name.
Oh, Tommy Tomorrow's what, from the 40s?
I think he's an old-time character.
40s, 50s, somewhere in through there. Yeah.
And
he's a very old-time character.
And there may be more characters in there from Tommy Tomorrow's book or something, but
they're really obscure DC science fiction characters.
There's almost no reason for this to be a DC comic. Because it has no connection with the DC universe, no connection with any DC characters that I know.
That's a plus to me.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. But it was just like this could have been kind of its own graphic novel.
Right.
And the story takes place 1,000 years in the future. And also, each issue took half an hour to read. That's how much reading there is. And because what he's doing is, I think he's used this technique before. The story is told from, the first character we're introduced to is, what's this guy's name? Homer Glint. Whoever that, I don't know if he's in DC, but I guess they named him Homer because he's the storyteller. And he is him in the future telling the story of the past. And he was the one who wrote the story of the past because he was kind of a writer / propagandist for Tommy Tomorrow and other people. So throughout the whole book, we get any caption you see, those square captions, is him talking from the future. So we get people talking, we get word balloons of people talking in the present. And then him talking, and it starts with like framing sequences of him this is him in the future, with the frame sequences telling you, what's happening in the past.
Now imagine how confusing that would be if you didn't have the square panels cueing you in on what tense was what.
It is confusing anyway.
Okay. It would be even worse. Right?
In terms of, I would say that technique only works about half the time because you're reading word balloon, caption from the future, word balloon, caption from the future. Right. And just when the story starts flowing, caption from, and he's sometimes he's giving you information about what's going on in the scene. And sometimes he's like the peanut gallery from the future.
Do you think
someone will say something, it'll be like, that didn't really work out.
Do you think that would have worked better if he did it like Prince Valiant style, where you just have text?
I don't know.
Not really integrated into the art itself.
I was never a fan of the Prince Valiant style, so that'd be a hard sell for me.
I just wondered.
But it's something I can see a lot of people not paying attention to. Like, I wonder how this would read just reading the word balloons and skipping all those captions. Because like I said, the technique only worked half the time for me.
Well, it would also be, just as a thought exercise, it'd be interesting just to read the word balloons without the art.
Yeah.
And see if you can follow, what's...
Probably not the word balloons. That'd be a little harder to follow, but, Right. But of course, the storytelling by Jose Garcia Lopez was impeccable. But these like head panels are pure Howard Chaykin.
Right.
So you could, like I said, he's not credited at all, but I think he mentioned in that thing that he did layouts for it, and you can these really look like Howard Chaykin layouts and spots. Not all the time, but a lot of the time.
I may have mentioned this to you in the past, but I also thought it was interesting that Howard can come off a little prickly and kind of passive aggressive in print.
Yeah.
But when I hear him, either audio or see a video of him, it's nowhere near that.
Yeah, he's much more charming.
Yeah, exactly.
It's tough to be charming on print. And the coloring is by Steve Oliff, who was an early computer colorist.
Oh, yeah, he used to color everything back in the day.
So this is either blue line. This looks like it might be blue line coloring. Do you know what blue line coloring is?
I've heard the term, but I don't know exactly how it works mechanically.
Well, what it used to be was the way regular coloring was done before digital coloring was, the colorists would make color guides.
Right.
And then the guides would go to the separators and they'd make they'd cut the film. It was blue line coloring was more expensive, which is probably why this is a $5 book. What blue line color is they wouldn't be just guides. They would actually print out, because normally for regular coloring that were just guides, you'd go to the photocopier and you just put in like a little bit thicker. There was this photocopy paper that was pretty thick that the colorists could work on pretty since, and the paper would always wrinkle up and stuff because it was just guides. With blue line coloring, they'd actually, and I think it was done, I don't know where it was done. It was done on like the printers or the separators or something. But anyway, they'd take the original art, they'd shrink it down to comic book size, and they'd print out the black plate or the inks on blue line on pieces of watercolor paper.
Interesting. Okay.
So then, like Steve Oliff or whoever would use watercolor to color it, and color separations were made photomechanically. They'd shoot right from that blue. They could drop out the blue line and actually they could put the black plate right over it now. So it was a what they call a full color process. It would be kind of the same as if they took a photograph of a painting and made in
an odd sort of way. Is it like rotoscoping?
No. Rotoscoping is a sort of
it's overlaid on top.
It's more like a Frank Frazetta painting. For a Frank Frazetta painting, for all those, what they would do with those is they used other method. They'd take a photograph of the painting, and you'd have what they call, and it would be a big net. It wouldn't be 35 millimeter. It would be 8x10 negative or 4x5 negative. And then you'd send that negative to the printing press, and they'd make the printing plate right photomechanically right from the negative.
Right.
Same thing as blue line coloring, except that they're photomechanically making the printing plates right from the blue line coloring, and then they're adding the line art on top of it.
Gotcha.
Valiant did that. If you look at Valiant coloring from the early 90s,
I don't. I was trying to think. I don't think I have any Valiant books at all, other than no, those are cross-gen. I don't think I own any Valiant books.
But if you were to look at Valiant books from the 90s, they shot right from the color guides. It's like they didn't. It looks like watercolor because they were using Dr. Martin's dyes or whatever. They'd photomechanically make their colors right from the guides.
Are you familiar with the artist Mark Wheatley?
Yes.
He had a funny story he posted on Facebook, I think it was last week or so, that he was at a convention with Frank Frazetta, and he was admiring his paintings and everything. He was helping him put paintings up on, for an art show at a convention or whatever. And there's the very famous painting of the Frost Giant's daughter, which is Conan with two giant barbarian giants trying to hack him. And there's a mountain in the background, and the top of the mountain fell off the painting as Mark was putting it up. And of course, Mark is like, oh my God, I've ruined, what's going to be later $1 million painting. Frank takes the piece that fell off and puts it back in place and smacks it. So that's what I get for using cheap material.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Here's Frank Frazetta painting, and you put it and it falls apart. You're like,
yeah.
That's why Mark needed new pants.
Yeah, those illustrators did whatever they could. I mean, there's a famous story. I think it's Franz Klein. He's a famous abstract expressionist from the 50s. He was the one who did those. Have you ever seen them? You see, they pop up sometimes in pop culture. I think it was him. Big black brushstrokes on white canvas.
I've seen all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, those are his most famous ones. But anyway, in the 50s, of course, he was making no money, and using whatever paints he could. He started making money. He got a dealer. He started making, but he was still using crappy, cheap paints.
Right.
His art dealer actually snuck into his studio at night and replaced all his cheap paints with good paints.
That's funny.
So the story goes.
Yeah, he would have had to know the difference when he went to use them.
Yeah, he would have.
Hey, this is a lot better.
But his art dealer kept telling him to get good paints, and he just didn't. So,
gotcha.
But the art dealer didn't want the paintings falling apart either.
Right.
But this story is pretty interesting in that it takes place 1,000 years in the future, and we have like 3 or 4 kind of main characters. Tommy Tomorrow's one of them. This guy other here.
There's another guy.
Homer Glint.
Who was the character from the future that was used by Darwin Cook in The New Frontier?
Oh, I don't remember. I just started reading The New Frontier for the first time and gave up on it.
I can see him in my mind, but I can't think of his name.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, there's those two. There's another woman named Carol, Karel.
Okay.
And there's a 4th character who is like Tommy Tomorrow's ex-wife or something. But they start out kind of as the 4 main guys. And it takes place in this sort of... And actually thinking about it, it reminds me a little of Starstruck. The Mike Kaluta story. And sort of that like space empire civilization where everything's kind of chaos.
It's funny. I love Starstruck, but if somebody asked me to describe it to them, I would be like, well, I can't do it.
Well, I think that's also because having read all of Starstruck for the first time a few years ago, and they came out in that giant oversized hardcover, it's not really one coherent story. It's a bunch of little
it's a bunch
stories,
of smaller stories that
right?
kind of weave in and each out of each other. Yeah.
And sometimes they don't have anything to do with it. Sometimes the story just
Sometimes.
stops and they start working on another one.
In some respects, it reminds me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in that regard.
But in this one, these kind of four characters discover the secret to immortality. And with the secret of immortality, they set themselves up as gods, or at least some of them does. Like for some reason, the guy right here, our narrator, Homer Glint, is the one who writes kind of their Bible and writes kind of their legend. And then Carol becomes the god, the goddess, the Messiah. And Tommy Tomorrow is always angry because he wasn't the Messiah, and his ex-wife just kind of goes off. So that's our starting point of the story. And it's not only them who's immortal. They bestow this immortality on the human race.
Oh, there's resource management for you.
And they're and it takes place 1,000 years after this happens. So the human race all worships this cow. They're like all out in space everywhere. And the human race worships this Carol, and she's like, yes, she's playing her part as the goddess. And Homer Glint is just like, I can't believe we pulled this off. Because he knows he's the one who wrote all this propaganda. He's the one who told all their story and made all this happen.
That kind of reminds me, there's a famous story from Harlan Ellison where he was around when L. Ron Hubbard created Dianetics. And I just get this same sort of thing. I can just see L. Ron off in the Hubbard say, I can't believe we did that, man.
And
they're Scientology, they're not Dianetics.
So like after 1,000 years, half the human race there's holy wars going on everywhere. Happy Friday, 62 Lefty Blues. And they're trying to get on with it. And it's like 1,000 years later, and some humans grow to want to die. They're like this after I've done everything. It's been 1,000 years, I've done it. And like the morality of the human race has just gone into the toilet too, because people are all immortal and living 1,000 years. And they mentioned in one of the lines, they're like, well, why aren't there a lot of people committing suicide? They're like, well, that's kind of what the holy wars are, is people committing. And meanwhile, this whole time, Tommy Tomorrow is just going, he so much wants to be the god that this Carol woman is, that he decides he's gonna go and kill her so he can become God. So there's just this, I mean, it's just, wow. It's like kind of this big sprawling story.
Yeah.
That starts out with, the first book is really, I guess it's broken into the first book would be them discovering immortality and kind of in that sort of adventure. The second book is probably what's been going on. And the third book would be, we're tired of immortality, the human race.
Right.
So it was an interesting book. Like, and I can and reading this made me realize what it is about Howard Chaykin's writing technique that puts people off and puts me off sometimes too. And I'd say only works about half the time. And what it is he never sets the scene. He never gives you a caption, meanwhile, back at the ranch.
Mm-hmm.
So he just, every few pages, changes scenes. And sometimes it goes smoothly. And sometimes it takes me half a page to realize we're in a new scene. Okay. So for that half a page, I'm just confused. he never uses any captions to set the scene. He never sort of like
There's no visual context, right?
Yeah. It's like, here's this, we get 2 pages of Tommy Tomorrow here. Dun, 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 he's just doing this. And then the next page is just this building. Is this the same building Tommy Tomorrow is? I don't know.
Right.
And it takes me half the page to realize, oh, this is a new scene. Oh, okay. This is a completely different building. Because like all the and he doesn't say, you know, meanwhile at Federation headquarters or something like that. He never ever does that.
Right.
But his change of scenes can just be, let me see if I can find another one here. Like here's a scene with these guys flying up in a ship. And then you turn the page. There's a whole bunch of other ships, not that ship, firing on something.
Right.
And it's like, well, what ships are these? Are they firing on that ship I just saw? And it takes me half a page to realize, oh no, this is a completely different scene.
Gotcha.
And you know, he does that. He does that in his current work too, still. And for some reason, I couldn't put my finger on it until I read this.
I mean, granted, I have 20. You know, hindsight is 20/20. It would be interesting to see if somebody else, like the colorist, for example, could have. You know, you'd have to do it on purpose, and you probably don't have writer's permission to do it. But do some kind of visual clue that lets you know, hey, this is a different scene, like the edge of the paper. It could be a different color.
Include. You know. There's not you, but if there are visual clues, they're subtle, and it just takes me. Oh, there's the page of original art I own. This one right here, the giant statue of Tommy Tomorrow. But sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's not fine, and I'm just like, where? And it's that moment of confusion that takes me out of the story. And then I got to get back into the story and get out of the story and get back into the story. So I'm not sure if I'm down with that technique. I don't know why he obviously, I mean, he's been doing it for a long, long time. But I'm not sure would his comics be more accessible if he didn't do that? I would have to think so.
I'm sure they would be.
Yeah.
I don't remember him doing anything like that when I read that Buck Rogers series that he wrote. It's just that his outlook was so cynical, and that doesn't work for that character.
Right. Like I said, it all depends. Like it all depends on your cast. Like this is a very kind of unfamiliar setting too. So it's like, you know, I don't know one spaceship from the next from a castle. It's not like, you know, Darth Vader, where you see Darth Vader's TIE fighter and you know it's Darth Vader's TIE fighter or something like that.
Well, that's one iteration of Darth Vader's TIE fighter.
Right.
That's the TIE. That's the TIE Advanced X1 from Scinar Fleet System.
Good evening, movie world.
Put a spaceship in something. I'm there. So.
But Carl called me.
Yeah.
Carl, there are more pages on Dropbox. Oh, I have to get these pages to him sometime. I'll wait till Paulo shows up and take 5 minutes and get those pages to him.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I enjoyed it. I had fun reading, but like I said, I have criticisms of it, but it was certainly wild. It was nothing like anything I've read before. And it seemed, like I said, it seemed very European to me, from the artwork to the storytelling to the...
Yeah, much more than an American typical superhero book,
Much, much different.
So those are first back issues you bought in how many years?
No, I think I bought, but it's like the only back issues I get are like, I think there was something else I got recently. I can't remember where it is now, but I remember saying I got something like this where I go, I should get those. And I go on, I bought that Palookaville #2. That's what I bought. But it's not quite the same as going back issue hunting in the store.
Right.
It's just, ooh, let me see if I can find these for cheap on eBay. And $5 an issue is cheap enough. Cheap enough. Yeah, bad idea is getting a book out in 2 weeks. They're going to get something ready for a con that's coming up in April. Because they haven't put any comics out in a month or two.
Which convention?
I don't know. He told me and I've forgotten it. Already I've forgotten it. That's another logo that's hard to read, though.
I kind of like that logo, though.
It's all right.
It fits in with the rest of the design.
I wonder why it's called Twilight. I don't even know why it's called Twilight. Twilight. Maybe it's a Twilight of the Gods thing.
Could be.
Who knows?
Maybe they're just going to call it Zone. No, that doesn't work. Let's call it Twilight.
Somewhat recently, me telling Jared did a whole of video back issues from my. That's right. I ordered some from my comic shop. That's right. About once a year, I think I was filling in holes in something. About once a year, I fill in holes on stuff.
Right.
Oh, I think I did some Strangers in Paradise. Matter of fact, my comic shop want list. I was like, I want to fill in holes on some back issues of Spirit, the kitchen sink comic.
Right.
And Stray Bullets, I think. I have a few holes in that I have.
Yeah, I never finished reading Strangers in Paradise. I don't remember how far along I was into it, but it's like after a certain amount of time, I just stopped reading it.
That's why a pull list is good. Because that's what I would not have all these issues of Usagi Yojimbo if it wasn't for a pull list. Because what happens when you don't have a pull list is because there are times you're just not as into it. And if they don't pull them for you at the shop, you miss them all. And then you go, I missed them all. I'll catch up some other time.
And then 25 years later,
you've never caught up. That's what happens. That's why it's like in the 90s, if I didn't have a pull list, I wouldn't have all those issues of Usagi Yojimbo.
Right.
Definitely.
I don't remember. I'm sure it must have been a magazine, but I don't really remember where I discovered Usagi Yojimbo.
I discovered it in the ads of other Fantagraphic books. I think it was Fantagraphics. No. I remember seeing ads for Albedo.
Right.
Seeing Usagi Yojimbo in there. And I always went, I should try that out sometime.
Right.
And I never did. And then they were like, Usagi Yojimbo, #1. I'm like, all right, I'm trying that out.
Right.
So it's been on my pull list since Usagi #1.
Yeah, for me, it must have been a magazine article that was about Usagi and Stan.
Yeah.
But I can't remember exactly what it was that introduced me to him.
Right. But even like ordering stuff from mycomicshop.com is barely getting back issues. It's like just going, look, they got that one. They got that one. They got that one. Send it to me.
Yeah.
The biggest problem is ordering too much. Because those $2 and $3 books can add up on that.
Yeah, stuff. I hear you. And like how much? Well, of course, most shippers these days, if you hit a certain amount, they'll give you free shipping.
I think they're over $25 is free shipping.
Right.
So.
But before that, like back in the 80s or what have you, you'd order stuff.
Yeah.
I could probably drive there and pick them up for this price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Expensive.
Yeah.
Twilight, Tommy Tomorrow. I don't think I've ever read a Tommy Tomorrow, but I can see why he said people accused him of raping the characters because
I mean,
no one in this
is fairly obscure compared to
but he's a madman in this.
Right.
And none of the characters are pure superhero Silver Age DC characters. Right. And this is 1990, so wow, 1990. That came out a long time ago.
32 years.
I was just starting working at Marvel in 1990. I probably could have picked these issues up around the office if I wanted to.
I was 22 years old in 1990.
Yeah. I was what, 24? 24, 25, right? Yeah. Or is it 23, 24? Whichever. My birthday's in August. Half the year on one age, half the year on the other. Mm-hmm. But wow, I was just looking at this going, wow, 1990. What did Jose Garcia Lopez do in the 90s? I don't remember seeing a lot of his work.
Most of the things I remember him for are associated with Superman.
Yeah, in the 80s and 70s. I had the first soft cover Usagi Yamamoto the Dark Horse put out. I had it for 3 years, but I haven't gotten past the first storyline. Eventually, I'll get around to it.
So, well worth reading.
That's like, what was I talking about last week? Oh, Jla Avengers. I had the Jla Avengers sitting around for 15 years before I finally read it a few years ago.
I know that there was an internal style guide that DC had that Garcia Lopez did all the art for.
Yeah, he did that in like the early 80s. He did all that stuff, I think, and into the 80s. But I don't remember.
If you asked me to break it down by decade, I don't know.
But I remember, Atari Force in the early. Could be that I didn't keep track of DC Comics in the 90s, so that's why I don't know what Jose Garcia Lopez did in the 90s. And he may have fallen out of favor with all the, hot new artists.
I don't think he was the most prolific guy in the world, if that makes any sense.
These must have taken him a while to do.
Right.
Because the artwork in there's a lot of artwork in these things.
Right.
He's got lots of figures. Lots of figures, lots of faces, lots of panels. I mean, just look at a page like that.
Yeah.
That takes a while.
There are a lot of characters in that book.
A lot of characters. Space. Ships, space docks, space evidence. Can't do that stuff overnight.
You have a book of spaceships in it. I'm there, man.
Yeah. A good series.
I was thinking I probably have more books that were written by Mike Mignola than maybe anybody else.
Yeah.
Just because there's so many in them, and there were the years in the Mignola verse.
Right. That was the main thing you were buying for a lot of time.
All the Hellboy stuff, BPRD, all that stuff.
Yeah, there's a few series I've been collecting for 30 years now. That Usagi, Savage Dragon, even Terry Moore stuff. If you put all Terry Moore stuff together, they're different series, but that's a lot of issues.
I have all the concrete stuff, but there's not much of it.
Yeah, I still have all the concrete stuff too. Dark Horse Presents Volumes 1, 2, and 3. That's a lot of comic.
Bunch of those. I don't have them all by any stretch, but I have a bunch of them.
I always say to myself, I want to go back and read those Dark Horse Presents, but I never do.
Chevelle Noir.
Chevelle, I remember that one.
Yeah.
Yup.
And there was another anthology book that Caliber did. It's called Negative Burn.
I never got any issues of that.
It was somewhat like Dark Horse Presents, but usually it was tinged a little darker story.
I think I looked through it a couple of times. I always kind of, because I like anthologies, I always kind of wanted to get it.
Right.
But then I look through an issue and go, it's okay. But
every once in a while they'd have like an artist sketchbook section, which is just seemed like random we needed space to fill or whatever. It's like, oh, here's a sketchbook by like Craig Hamilton, for example.
I remember being
that.
really tempted once at like a con I was at that had like a package of negative burn, like 20, 30, 40 issues or whatever for like $40 or something. And I remember going, oh, that's not a bad price.
Yeah, that's a pretty good price for 20-some issues.
Yeah, but I passed on it, and I'm always like, I should have got those.
Yeah, I would buy those for that price.
Just like I can remember once, this must be in the late 90s, early 2000s. Jack was the guy who owned my LCS then. And he had just got in a complete set of Marvel's The Invaders. About 40 issues.
Oh, okay.
Mint condition. They're all nicely conditioned. And I have most of them from my childhood. I've probably, out of the 40 issues, I probably have 30, maybe 35 even. But these were nicer than mine. And he was like, look, just got these in. Selling them for $40. You want them? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I got enough comics, enough Invaders. And then this day I'm like, man, I should have gotten $40, $1 a piece.
It's always that thing that sticks in your mind. You're like years later, like 2 o'clock in the morning. It's like, I should have bought that.
Yeah, not that they're worth a fortune now or anything, but they're all in one place for $1 a piece.
Yeah.
Somebody
had the Planetary series that Warren Ellis did. They had like a whole run of those dirt cheap one time, and now I wish I'd have bought that. I have them all now, but I wish I'd have bought them at the time because then I would have got to read the story 10 years earlier than I did. So
yeah, the one thing I am glad I got was must have been like 2007, 2008. It was whenever they first put out the Marvel Eternals in an omnibus.
Okay.
Which, the retail price on those is $125.
Yeah.
Then it, usually on Amazon or whatever, it drops down to $85, $90, whatever. And I was always saying to myself, I really want to read Jack Kirby. And I hadn't bought any omnibuses before. That was one of the first omnibuses to come out.
Right.
And I kept saying to myself, maybe I should buy that. Maybe I should buy that. Maybe I should. I said that for so long, it went out of print and rose up in price. So I said to myself, well, why don't I just look for the issues on eBay?
Right.
Sure enough, complete set Eternals 1 to 20, $20 shipped.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, I'll get that. And I got that, and I read all these. But nowadays, all those Eternals, you couldn't get that complete series in mint condition.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I used to have a copy of Men in Black #1.
Wow.
And I sold it. And if I tried to sell it for that today, I would get 1/20th of what it used to be worth.
Yeah. I sold my copies of The Crow original miniseries to a friend and coworker. This is the late 90s. He actually gave me top dollar for them. Because he was just a huge Crow fan because the movie's like, I'll buy your comic. I'm like, yeah, how much do you give me? He gave me like, I don't know. There was only 4 issues in the mini. He may have gave me $20 to $40 an issue. Like he gave me a good price on them. I was like, all right. Now they're worth a lot more than that. But I was like, you know what? I got a good price for them at the time. And I gave them to my friend who was a fan.
I remember several years ago, not too long after the movie came out, James O'Barr was at Heroes Con. And Tim and I were down there. We were checking in the hotel. It was Tim or Gary, I can't remember what it was. We were checking the hotel. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, they wouldn't take James Barr's credit card. Having some kind of problem with it. I remember we looked at each other and was like, they don't know about the movie, do they? It was just ironic, at the time.
Yeah. Big movie star.
I haven't heard hiding her hair out of him in quite a while.
No. I don't know what he besides The Crow, has he done anything comics wise?
Not that I mean maybe, but if he did, not that I know of.
Yeah. Interesting. He had
even outside of that, I don't, you hear about people if they don't do comics anymore, then they'll write or do work on
whatever
film.
else they're doing.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
Like I've heard stories of David Mazzucchelli, who became a musician. He had got enough money from the Batman Year One royalties that he became, a musician. So
it's hard to make money doing that these days unless you're already
hard to make money doing comics and music. Yeah. Not easy.
But no, I haven't heard anything out of O'Barr in a long time.
No. I guess he wasn't really a comics guy. He was a comics guy for a brief moment.
Maybe so. I saw Billy Tucci was doing a She collection on Kickstarter.
Oh, is he doing one of those big omnibuses? Did I see that?
I think so, yeah. Seemed to be oversized.
Like giant. 500, 1,000 pages.
I didn't realize it was that. I didn't look.
I think that was it. I remember looking at that going, wow, that is big.
I just remember back in the day, that was a fairly hot book back in.
Yeah, it was.
It was the early 90s whenever it came out.
Early to mid 90s.
And nowadays, you don't hear about it at all unless you were part of that crowd back then.
Yeah, like I said, I think those are the guys who are doing well on Kickstarter. Possibly they kind of still have their fans around. They're just not. Their fans are just not in the comic shops. So
I've been seeing a lot of art from Bernie Wrightson pop up that was conceptual art that was done for movies. That was never actually published anywhere. But
well, that's one of the things Howard Chaykin said in that interview. Which he said before he took a 15-year hiatus from comics to write television.
Yeah, he wrote a lot of TV. He wrote for The Flash and
because
several other things.
He didn't see any way to make money in comics.
Right.
So he's like, TV writing is going to be a lot better for me. I mean, it's nice that he could just step into TV writing. Most people can't do that.
That's true. Yeah, you got to have an end somewhere.
Yeah. You or I can't just go, I'll just write for TV. And they hire us on major network shows.
Local access cable, maybe. If they got desperate enough, like put something on like 2:30 in the morning. Yeah.
That was definitely his thing.
There was another guy that kind of did the opposite. He wrote for TV and then he transitioned into comics. He used to do Green Lantern, and he was on a reality show for a while.
He was the one who came from MTV's The Real World.
Yeah, right? What was it? I can't think of his name.
I can't remember his name either.
I can see his artwork in my mind, but I can't think of his name.
He went on MTV's The Real World in like the first or second season. It was like, I want to be a comic book writer.
Yeah, and he went on to do Green Lantern stuff. And
matter of fact, I have his book. I can remember the name of his book, Pedro and Me. I can't remember his name either. We're old.
That's what happens when you get old, kid. Don't let that happen to you.
You can remember his whole. I can remember his whole story. Have you ever read Pedro and Me?
No, I haven't.
I think he drew it too. Pedro was another guy from MTV's The Real World, only he had AIDS and he was dying. So it's a story of him meeting him on The Real World and his friendship with him as he was dying. It was like, whoa. It was kind of a heavy
news article the other day where they have actually cured a lady of AIDS.
Yeah, I saw that.
I thought, wow.
I was like, that's good.
Yeah. What was that guy's name? It was a short name, wasn't it?
Put Pedro and Me into the search engine and see what comes up. We can't remember.
No.
I prefer to remember myself, but
I can remember who played a really obscure role in like the original Star Trek series, but I can't remember this fellow's name.
I think Green Lantern was his first assignment with DC.
Judd Winnick.
Judd Winnick. There we go. I would have never got it.
I mean, there's another name which I haven't heard of in a while, but then I haven't exactly been actively looking for him either. So.
Right. Well, also what it is if you work at Marvel or DC and your editor leaves, that's who was giving you work. You can, that can slow you down too.
Right.
So some of these guys, it kind of editors, they age out almost.
Right.
They have like 3 or 4 editors who hire them. They kind of disappear, and the younger 3 or 4 editors don't hire. They have their own guys.
And then there's other guys like Art Adams that, like, no matter where he goes, he's always got an audience.
Right. He can put asses in the seats, so he'll always have some covers to do.
That's true.
Always have some covers to do.
Oh, I did see there's going to be another Shaolin Cowboy series from Jeff Darrow.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I thought that was, bring it on. I want more.
That reminds me, let's see, one of the new books I got this week, Jeff Darrow, James Stokoe kind of reminds me of Jeff Darrow.
Mm-hmm.
And that real busy style of his.
I can see why, yeah.
This is Orphan and the 5 Beasts, number 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this was my favorite issue. Because it had more of a story than the other ones had.
Okay.
Because the basic story is this karate master taught these 5 guys his karate style. And they all eventually left his school. And without constant practice, the karate style kind of corrupts your mind. And so this new student, this Orphan, he taught this style, and now she has to go out and kill the 5 beasts. Pretty basic story, Hong Kong kung fu movie story. But this one had the most interesting beast in it. Because this was kind of his best student, and we found out, and he was in last issue too, but we got a story this issue. He was the most curious guy, and so everywhere he'd go, he would learn stuff. And one of the last things he learned was cooking, and was kind of driven mad. Mm-hmm. So he started eating his own arm, and discovered he could, because he was so corrupt, and he had cut off pieces of his own flesh, and they'd grow back. So he started a restaurant.
Lovely.
Selling parts of his own body. And people who ate him were like, had an insatiable appetite for this meat now. So this whole town was going crazy, eating this meat that he cut off himself.
I could see Jeff Darrow drawing that.
James Stokoe does it. Yeah. And the fight was really cool too, because you saw him, you just cut off his arm, but he just started fighting this woman. He just started growing other arms. And at one point, there's this one really cool scene where she thinks she's got him. She's trying to cut his head off, and an arm grows right out of his mouth and punches her. And just some great visuals in this one.
Right.
Really good storytelling, great visuals. Really enjoyed it. Like I said, my favorite. I think there's only one issue left of this, but my favorite issue. And a real goofy ending too. That was fun. But just a lot, very visual, a lot of fun, good story in this one too. So that helped. Because I think, sometimes when there's not a ton of story, I'm just like, all right, it was fun. But like with the Jeff Darrow stuff, the Shaolin monk. Sometimes it's just like eye candy.
Yeah, it's kind of like Mobius in that regard. You're not really sure where the story is going, but you kind of don't care because the art's so good.
Mobius usually had a story, though, in the end. Even if he was just telling you.
Every once in a blue moon, you come across ones like,
I
don't know where he's going with this one.
Like Jeff Darrow's, though, his story was the fight scene. That was his story. Yeah. Guys chopping each other up. The fight scene.
Yeah, I remember he did a cover for Conan, one of the Conan titles that Dark Horse did. It was just obscenely detailed.
Yeah. What did I just just saw something about Conan. I can't remember what it was. Oh well.
Comics wise, or
Comics wise, I think it was. Maybe it was some issues of King Conan that were coming out. Because they're putting out King Conan again. Of course, I always think of those Mike Kaluta covers on King Conan.
oh, those were so good.
They were some terrific covers.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate to sound like Abe Simpson, say they don't make them like that anymore. But damn, those were good covers.
They make all sorts of covers these days. Yeah, covers endlessly. There are still plenty of good covers out there. Just most of them aren't, which was probably true in those days.
No, that's true too.
But at least in those days, you got a story with your cover, even if the story could intrigue you, even if the drawing wasn't that up to snuff.
It would be interesting to see. You're probably not going to get away with it in today's market, but if somebody would do a return to like one and done stories that you could still make into a series.
What was that?
One and done stories, like
done stories.
Yeah,
they're one and done stories are 6 issues now.
Right.
Oh, what was I just? The Human Target. I haven't read that book, but a lot of people have. They've liked the art in it. I forget who's writing it. Is that a James Tynion book or a Tom King book? I can't remember which one it was.
I remember Terrence did a couple of videos on it.
Yeah. A lot of people really like the art in it.
Mm-hmm.
But he was saying, the writer was saying something on Twitter where he was like, saying glad everybody liked it, da-da-da. Mm-hmm. First 6 issues are first season with 6 issues are wrapping up in, I don't know, and then we're going to have another 6-issue arc, maybe a new series. I can't remember. Starting in September. And he was like, and wait till you see the cliffhanger we have for you at the end of issue 6.
Right.
I'm like, you see that? That's one story. If that would be one issue in the old days with a cliffhanger at the end of it. Here, the story arc is 6 issues, and they give you a cliffhanger at the end of it.
Did Chaykin write for the Human Target TV show back in the 90s?
I don't know. But that's one of the things he mentioned in that interview. He was
did an airplane design for that show.
He said in that interview, he's like, people in Hollywood thought comics are all the same and they're all superheroes. He's like, since I was a comic book writer, they just kept giving me superhero shows to write. Right. He's like, I don't even write superhero, but they hear comic book superhero. Here, you write this one.
Yeah.
I found that interesting.
A few months back, James Patterson did a modern day take on The Shadow, which was not well received at all. And he's now going to do the same thing with Doc Savage. And all the Doc Savage fans are like, I don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
There are Doc Savage fans?
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Hey there, pal.
Hey there. You're the only Doc Savage fan?
He's the only one.
No, I am not. There are plenty of them. They're not. I'm probably one of the younger ones.
I remember a few years ago, there was found some blog discussing a guy trying to get into Doc Savage, and he had recommendations from lots of people. Right. And when they said, I want to get into Doc Savage, which stories do we recommend? Oh, you got to read this and this and this and this. And they said, okay. Then he talked to another fan. Okay, what did you read? Oh, I read this and this. Those are terrible. No, you got to read this and this and this and this and this.
Yeah, everybody's got a different opinion.
Yeah, but apparently the guy just couldn't get into Doc Savage.
That's fine. I mean, it's not for everybody.
I think I read one Doc Savage book back when I was a teenager, and I enjoyed it, but I never saw another Doc Savage book. I never got my hands on one.
Pulp writing styles, I think that they're really hard to get for more sophisticated readers who like non-adventure stuff.
That's part of it. I also think part of it is they usually took place in the 20s and 30s, which I think are harder for some people now to relate to. I mean, they are what they are. They're not Shakespeare, but they're a lot of fun.
No, I think the guy was into superheroes, so I don't see the being in the 20s and 30s. I don't see that as being the problem.
Well, if the guy was into superheroes, I would have recommended Tom Strong. Because I mean, that's where he came from, was Doc Savage, basically.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's really he's so much Doc Savage that like I said, what I always found odd about Doc Savage is he always surrounded himself with specialized experts who he was more expert than. And Tom Strong was the same way.
Strong was like, sort of. Yeah.
I've got these specialized expert near me, but I know more than them. So
no, it's more like I don't have time to deal with this. So I suppose you'll do. You won't bungle this. No respect for the help.
I would love to see some more Tom Strong stories, but I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Nope.
Well, they used Tom Strong in that DC series, the Terrifics.
I don't. It's like it's out of Highlander too. We don't talk about that, okay?
It's post crisis.
I just have the same problem with that I did with Conan going to the Avengers. I just don't want to see that universe crossover with another one.
Uh-huh.
By the way, I was showing this before, Paolo. Have you ever seen this series, Twilight?
I have the trade.
Okay, this came out in trade.
Oh yeah,
it came out.
Oh,
6 or 7 years ago.
Oh, because this is from 1991. I just was surprised it came out in trade. I think because when I was looking for them on eBay, I didn't see any trades.
Gotcha.
So maybe some call it. Does it have the exact same cover as issue 1?
Yeah.
Okay, that must be because sometimes people call these square bound ones like mini trades or something like that. So there must have actually been a trade I saw there then that had.
Yeah. The story was pretty good. That's the type of thing you go through previews and you notice they're reprinting Twilight.
Yeah,
better snap this up right now.
I have a page of original art from it, so I'm like, and I saw an interview with Ralph Reese on his page. Posted an interview with Chaikin, from a local PBS station, and he mentioned that in it. And I was like, I have a page of original art from that. I should really get the series. So I finally did. But it seemed very European to me, too. It had much more of a European feel than an American feel.
Yeah, the setting kind of feels like it. Even the characters are based on DC's science fiction characters from the 50s.
Yeah,
even the more obscure.
I knew Tommy Tomorrow barely. That was it. I'm like, I don't know if there was like no reason for it to be a DC comic. He could have just changed the characters' names and worked exactly the same.
Right.
Yep. You probably. I don't even know if he's the one with that idea or somebody suggested it to him.
Have no idea. I'm not sure.
Because bringing back those characters in 1990,
maybe that was a copyright thing.
Yeah. No, the problem would just be for trademarking, and they didn't put the characters' names on.
No, they were just trying to keep them in print just so you claim the rights.
Of course, this was at that time when DC had their mature readers line before it became Vertigo. So, yeah, an obscure property, completely disconnected from what it used to be, it would work.
No. Worked for Doom Patrol.
Getting a page for Bad Ideas set up. They're trying to get it
doing
out in 2 weeks.
We're getting one of the Great Gatsby comics published here in Portugal, but it's not the good one.
Which one are you getting?
Let me see. Find the Facebook post where we're bad mouthing it.
I got a YouTube pop up for one of Gus's videos the other day. I was like, "Oh, cool! I'm finally going to watch one of Gus's videos live," and everybody was speaking Portuguese. I was like, "Man."
Must learn foreign languages. Although I really don't follow any actual French channel, and I should.
I can pick out words here and there, but not enough of them.
Has he got which Gatsby it is?
Okay,
See
let me
what
find
tool
where.
I have over there. Is it one of these two? Let's see. K. Woodman Maynard or A. Morton?
Yeah, it's that one.
This one?
Yeah. People were complaining about the design.
It's okay.
The design of the book itself, or the artist's design?
The design of the book itself. The Portuguese edition, they have to rearrange the letters on the cover, so it doesn't read it's not inside the art like in the US edition.
It's not in the pool.
Yeah. It's
I
kind of like
sent a message to a friend of mine who's an art designer for a role-playing game company. And I'm going to leave out the names to protect the guilty, but I saw a picture today for some new books that are coming out. They've all got similar trade dress, and I looked at them and was like, I've never designed a book in my life, but I swear to God I could do better than what they did. And I'm not kidding. It wasn't terrible, but it was just so mediocre that it was really mediocre.
Terrible would be more interesting than mediocre.
It actually would have, yes.
Here's a book I got this week that surprised me how much I liked it. Supermassive.
Oh.
Which is which is a Radiant Black crossover / spinoff. Radiant Black. Radiant Black's a series I've been buying last year, and it's okay. It's a solid B series, I say. And they want to expand it and do more series. So they got Radiant Red is one of the ones they're going to be doing. Then they've got one called Rogue Sun, and I think a graphic novel next year called Inferno Girl. So this Supermassive is a crossover with the character Rogue Sun, who I think has and maybe just next week he's got a first issue coming out. And what did I say? The other one was Inferno Girl, who's from another dimension or something. But this was really, I liked the art in it. I liked the storytelling. I liked the crazy bright colors. And this is the one, what sold me. I was looking at it going, do I want more Radiant Black? Because, I was like, Radiant Black's a B. Do I want another B comic? I want an A comic kind of thing. But you know how that goes. But I'm like, what sold me on it was a gatefold. Like, ooh, this comic has a gatefold in it. I haven't seen a gatefold in a comic, and it worked really well storytelling-wise.
Mm-hmm.
Just this big, colorful gatefold. And in the story, as part of the plot, they lose their powers for whatever reason. Some monster steals their powers, and they eventually, of course, get their powers back. And the gatefold is them getting their powers back. So it worked really well storytelling-wise. So this actually made me want to read more of the Supermassive universe, and it's by let's see. Where's the credits? Written by 3 people. Kyle Higgins, Ryan Parrott, and Matt Groom. Illustrated by Francesco Mana. With Simone Ragazzoni. Marcelo Costa, he's the regular guy. Abel and Erica DeRusso. Pages 19 to 21. So it looks like I guess they all worked on it. But it was good. Let's see who's writing the Kyle Higgins. Radiant Red is by Cherish Chen and David LaFuenta, who had nothing to do with this book. Rogue Sun is by Ryan Parrott and Abel. Okay, I'll check out Rogue Sun. But I really enjoyed this one. I did not expect to like it so much, but it was just a well done superhero story.
What was the cover price on that?
$6. $6.
So not a super massive price, but massive.
No, but I mean it's double size. It's square bound, so it's probably 48 pages, I would say, with a gatefold.
Mm-hmm.
Was it better than 2 issues of Spawn?
It was better than 2 issues of Spawn, easily.
Okay.
Which isn't that hard. but at least you know what? Better than 2 issues of Spawn might be a harder thing if I were to pick random comics. Better than 2 issues of Spawn of comics I actually choose that I think I'm gonna like would be harder than like if I were to close my eyes and go to the shelf and pull out a comic, a random issue of Spawn might be better than whatever I pull. Because there's a lot of bad comics out there. But that was a good one, Supermassive. Mm-hmm. I was surprised. I didn't even put it on my pull list because I remember deciding when I get my email every week saying final order cutoff, what do you want to add? What do you want to order? I remember seeing Supermassive and going, $6. I don't know. I'll pass. But then I saw it in the store, so I'm like, let's take a look at how it looks. And I was like, it looks all right. Oh, double gatefold. All right, they sold me.
Sold. Somebody's going to do a pop-up book, and you're going to be all over it.
Love pop-up books. Those are great. I said, do you remember the Superman color forms?
I remember color forms, but I don't remember Superman specifically. I had some.
No, this was a comic.
Oh, no, I do not remember that. No.
Oh, I'll have to. I don't know. I'll have to probably in the other room. What it was do you know what color forms are, Paulo?
Nope.
That was the brand name for them. I think they also call them vinyl clings.
Yeah, they were just vinyl cutouts of various.
Right. It was a kid's toy, and they'd give, and it would come in a box, right?
Yeah,
you'd have a box, and I think one side of the box would be a vinyl printed scene, flat vinyl. And then you'd have all these little flat vinyl characters you'd put in like they'd kind of be like paper dolls in a way because sometimes they come with different clothes, and you'd take the vinyl figure and put it down on the vinyl background and put boots on the vinyl, and they'd stick there because it was vinyl and it was static cling. Color Forms was the big name. In the early 90s, they had, I think it was a Superman book. Matter of fact, did I just put one over there? My sister gave it back to me. She had one for her kindergarten class. Where is it? Oh, yeah, it's right here. Look at that. I have it. I should pull this out. And here we go. Let me get bigger. These are the colorful. See, this is the Daily Planet or the Metropolis, and these are all the color forms. We peel these off of here. Let's see, they've been on there for a long time. Oh, this is Milestone. Oh, they've been on there so long they barely come off. There we go. There's Hubba Hubba. See, there's Hubba Hubba. That comes off because they're not stickers. They're just vinyl. So we can move Hubba Hubba over here. We can move off Superboy. Let's see if we can get him. There we go. He's coming off. There's Superboy, and who is that? Oh, that's one of the Milestone guys. And we can move him around, and we can make them stick over here now. These are what colorful, and you can play with the comic book cover. Let's see, what is the name of this one? Worlds Collide.
It's basically a physical version of Microsoft Paint.
Yeah. You move all these little characters around. Oh, those are two of them overlapping. 1994 this came out. Worlds Collide #1.
Yeah, crossover between the DC characters and Milestone.
I do not remember that book at all.
I only remember it because of because of that. Look, we can.
Yeah, it wasn't really between DC and Milestone. It was between Superman and Milestone.
Ah, okay.
We were talking about Shaolin Cowboy earlier. Can you imagine some Shaolin Cowboy color forms?
Woo. Well, there's like 20 or 30 of these little figures in here.
Yeah.
I mean, they gave you a lot. I saved this one because this had to be my favorite gimmick cover of the 90s. I mean, how could you not like that?
I remember when the Mighty Magnor came out from Malibu, it had a die cut cover.
It was $3.95 cover price. Like that. I don't think I've ever seen that repeated. That might be my favorite gimmick cover.
It's time to bring it back.
Yeah, they should. Come on, color forms cover. I wonder how many people can remember that.
You have to be in your 40s at a bare minimum to remember those.
Because I've never, and it comes with them. I have one that's not unused. It's like they all come like on a white backing board.
Uh-huh.
Sort of, you have to like pop them out of the clear vinyl they're in.
Right.
Because they're, the figures and then they're die cut, but they leave the clear vinyl there. So when you get it as a fan, you have to take out the clear vinyl sheet and pop all the figures off. Oh man, that's a fun one. I used to love color forms as a kid.
Maybe Gore Vidal will get lucky and they'll do a Saga color forms book.
Color forms. New issue of Saga is out. Speaking of Gore Vidal.
I've never read Saga.
It's good. It just keeps on chugging along like this big long saga. And this one is have you read Saga, Paolo?
I tried reading 5 pages and then quit.
That much, huh?
But in this issue, we get our at the end of 55, our who's left in our gang of heroes. We've got I've read 56 issues of it. You'd think I know their names, but I don't. You've got the mother. You've got the daughter. The daughter is narrating it too from the future. We've got the baby robot, the kid robot. They call them. There's these characters in this book. They have TV monitors for heads, and one of them is a kid with a TV monitor for a head, who's in the family now too. There's the mother, the daughter, the robot head kid, and some Gilligan first mate character. And they got swept up by this giant pirate ship at the end of last issue, out in space. And so this issue, they're all hiding and trying to figure out what to do, and the pirates got them, and the pirates are all nice and friendly, and you just keep waiting for the pirates to not be nice and friendly. So by the end of the issue, you get a little cliffhanger where the pirates were not nice and friendly. So, but good issue. I like it. I enjoy this book. When it first started, I was like, it's going to be a long, structureless story, and I was into that, and I'm still into that. Now, the people I hear complain about it are the ones who don't want a long, structureless story. And I'm like, it's in the title, Saga. It's just, this is not a tightly plotted.
Is it kind of like Starstruck in that regard?
Like what?
Is it kind of like Starstruck in that regard?
I don't know Starshock. What's that?
No, Starstruck.
Oh, Starstruck. No, it's tighter than Starstruck.
Okay.
Because, but like I said, Starstruck was kind of written at all different times. Yeah. It's patchwork. This isn't patchwork. It's just kind of long, and there's no end to it's like a normal story, you pick up the first issue. Within the first or second issue, you know what the goal of the story is.
Okay.
You know they have to get the widget to, they have to get the MacGuffin to Mount Doom by the end of this story.
Right.
This is a story about there's a war going on. The wings and the horns, they call it. One group of aliens has wings, the other group of aliens has horns. And
gee, that's not exactly the word I'm looking for. Archetypical, is it?
But anyway, and of course, a winged woman and a horned man fall in love and have a kid. And this is the kid's story with her mother and father. And of course, both sides would kill them if they knew that they were in love with the other side. And it's just them running away, trying to have a life. So that's all it is. And what happens along the way. And the story is narrated by the little girl who's, I don't know if she's an adult or just a teen by then, but she's older than she is in this story.
Right.
And she's the narrator, so. And it's just like a continuing story of someone's life. There's no goals. There's no, they're constantly trying to figure out what they have to do.
So it's kind of like Harvey Pekar.
Yeah, there's a little bit of Harvey Pekar.
Just keep going. Yeah.
It's a saga. It's long and keep on going. Did you read any comics this week, Paolo?
Not this week.
Not this week. Too busy working?
Yeah, I had to do a photo shoot for the new electric Kia.
Ah. Were you topless on the hood?
No, I was inside the car doing laps around the roundabout.
Just got this image of Paulo, dancing around the car like Tawny Katane in a Whitesnake video.
It says it's like 50 degrees, which means it's freezing.
Tony, well, you couldn't have read this one this week. I was just telling you, it takes about a half an hour an issue to read these. Mm-hmm. And they're double-sized issue. I think they're 48 pages.
Yeah.
So this is not decompressed at all. This is before the era of decompressed storytelling.
It's like a zip file, right?
Yeah. Nope, no zip file on that.
Yeah, but I kind of like that. To me, it's Jose Luis Garcia Lopez unrestrained.
It looks different than other Jose Garcia Lopez in that I think of Jose Garcia Lopez usually as like smooth flowing lines, but this isn't. This is kind of lots of texture. Mm-hmm. It looks European even in his drawing more than his other stuff. Lots of texture, lots of figures, lots of detail in the plants, and there's just tons of stuff in here. It's not like you know what it is. Everybody's got clothes on too and suits. When I think of Jose Garcia Lopez, you think of figure drawing.
Yeah, and you should expect it because it's written by Chaikin.
Yeah,
weren't people having sex in every other page?
So it's like everybody's costume. Everybody's got not just costume, but elaborate, like military type costumes and all sorts of. There's not the sort of figure work that Superman is basically naked with some color on him. So that's a completely different type of figure drawing than this, where he draws all this and everything's got patterns on it, and everything's got all sorts of stuff. He draws spacesuits and scuba suits and all sorts of stuff.
Kind of like Mobius in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but with more. I would say Mobius was more poetic, more eloquent with a single line. Mobius was kind of looking to distill things down. There's no distilling things down in here. It's like let's draw everything we can think of that has to do with this space outfit.
There's one thing about the story. DC put out a bunch of miniseries around that time, where they dealt with one of the main characters becoming a godlike. It was Twilight. It was Clash, which I can't remember who wrote and drew, and The Naz, which was by Brian Talbot.
Okay. I have The Naz.
I don't think I've read The Naz or the other one, Clash. Like that, I can't believe this came out so long ago. 1990, 1991. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I was. 1990 was when I first started at Marvel. That was that long ago. I could have picked these up around the office if I'd seen them, but never did. But I was kind of off Howard Chaykin at this time too.
Yeah, but this doesn't read like typical Chaykin.
No.
If you were expecting American flag type stuff in there.
Well, it does. One of the things I was just I was talking to Scott about earlier was there's a couple of things that Chaykin does in here that he still does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the guy who's in love with the robot secretary.
No, not that. Not plot wise. I'm talking writing style wise. Mm. That kind of took me out of it sometimes. Mm. Like the first thing that he did was he's got the narrator from the future, much like Saga, but he was interspersing the narration with the balloons. So it was like, here's a balloon that's happening now. Here's a narration from the future. Here's a balloon. So sometimes it would work smoothly, and sometimes I found it jarring. It was like the narrator was interrupting the story. So I was like, that's a little criticism I have. And the other thing he does that I didn't realize till I read this, that he still does, which I can find confusing in his work, is that he never sets the scene with a caption or anything. He just changes scenes, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it takes me half a page to figure out he changed scenes. And that sort of half a page of confusion can be like, huh? So like but he still tells stories that same way. Uh-oh, Paolo's talking to himself all of a sudden.
Maybe I'm misremembering, but aren't the when the scenes change, don't the captions change color?
No.
That's something I brought up. It would have been interesting to see if they would have gave some kind of visual context.
Maybe they do. I see some caption. No, I don't know. But he doesn't know those captions are white. Those captions are white. Mm. Like he'll do things like here they are on some random ski lodge on this page. And then the next page, he gives you an establishing shot of something. But is this the ski lodge? Is this not the ski lodge?
You don't know. It doesn't look like a ski lodge.
So you read down the page and go, oh, okay, this is a different place.
Yeah, but the dialogue kind of sells it.
Yeah, no, but you have that's just it. You eventually you figure it out through the dialogue. But for those first half a page, my mind is confused. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on how smoothly it's done, or how unsmoothly it's done. I'm just saying that, and he still does that, and I still find myself occasionally confused by it. Like, oh, he changed scenes, and that's what's the name of the comic book history one he's been doing that I can't remember all of a sudden?
Hey Kids Comics.
Hey Kids Comics. There we go. And that one, sometimes you can. I'm like, oh, he changed scenes. We're somewhere else. Who are these characters? That has so many characters in it that I constantly found myself referring back to the key of who these characters were. Oh yeah, that's this guy. Oh yeah, that's this guy. Which that's why I liked better. I liked it better reading in physical copy than digital, because I first read it digitally and I was like, it was okay. Then I got the issues of it and read them in physical copies, and I liked it much better just because it was easier to flip to that inside front cover. Go, oh yeah, that's her. Oh yeah, that's her.
The dramatis
sometimes,
personae, huh?
What was that?
The dramatis personae.
Yep. Because there's just so many characters in that, and they switch time periods, and this one's a thinly veiled version of him, and it's like you don't always know who's the thinly veiled version of who.
It's like a friend of mine asked me if you should get into Game of Thrones, and I said, well, you're going to run into about 400 different characters, but about 397 of them die. So.
Let's see, what else did I get this week? Arrowsmith issue 2.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't look a thing like Steven Tyler.
And another good issue. Once again, this is kind of a war is hell story. And there's all sorts of names I don't know. This alternate universe, it's like, let's see if Paulo knows some of them. The capital of the dual monarchy of Tyrolia, Hungary.
Yeah. I think I complained about that because Tyrol is a pretty minor. It's famous because of yodeling, but politically, Tyrol has always been a minor province of Austria. So the name Austria is also the name in Latin. So they should have used that. Right. And if they wanted to make it more exotic, they should have used the Hungary's Roman name of Pannonia. So Austria Pannonia.
And the name of the city is W-I-E-N, Y.
Yeah,
Tyrolia.
It's Vienna in German. Vienne.
Vienne? Is that a real city?
Yeah, it's Vienna.
Oh, it's Vienna. Okay.
Yeah.
Then they named a couple other places. I was like, where's that? I have no idea.
Yeah, Lotharingia, they kind of merged the Belgium and the Netherlands because that was where Lotharingia was, sort of. But they merged Belgium, Netherlands, and the Duchy of Burgundy, which is actually and Alsace-Lorraine to make that territory.
That's right. He mentioned he's from the Great Lakes region of Connecticut too. So Connecticut goes all the way up to the Great Lakes.
If you can find a political map of Europe in the 17th century, it would be interesting for you to see how much things have changed.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, and in the story, the reason it's called Behind Enemy Lines is he's on a covert mission, and he got captured, which he was supposed to get captured because he's supposed to go to this one prisoner of war camp and meet up with someone, blah blah blah. But this guy showed up who's supposedly hunting him down, the Black Baron, and we get to see he goads one of the English officer prisoners into a duel. So there's a nice sky. Their dragons they're little. They have these little dragons, and that's what makes they're on the cover too, and that's what makes them fly with their magic. So you get to see a sword duel in the air with these little dragons.
So it's the video game Joust.
Yeah, I like that. But no, they have platforms in Joust, and their dragons ride them. But yeah, I didn't even see this before. I just noticed in their barracks there's this weird looking cat that's eating a rat. It's not quite a Gil Kane cat, but it's kind of weird looking.
Mm-hmm.
But another good issue. The colorist does a good job with textures in this book. Mm-hmm. Who's the colorist? Jose Villarrubia.
Yep.
He's been around a while.
Because this is sort of I know that name definitely. Because this is sort of a traditionally drawn and inked book, I'd say. The inker actually is doing his job in adding volume and form and lighting to a lot of it, so that the colorist is coming in and adding texture, a lot of visual texture to it. Mm-hmm. So I think that's interesting. I haven't seen a comic like this in a while because usually, a lot of times the colorist has taken over the job of the inker.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. Yeah.
And in this is a completely different direction where the inker is doing his job and the colorist is doing something different. Lots of tech.
But Pacheco wanted his friends to have some work. I mean, Rafa Fontanes has been working with Pacheco since the 90s, back when they were still doing the Spanish superhero comics, Iberia Inc.
Speaking of color and texture, did you see Terrence's video about the Inkle in black and white?
No, I haven't watched that one yet. I've seen it in my feed.
It's interesting seeing the artwork in black and white. The fine detail lines stand out more.
The Saga cover has water droplets in the illustration. And I just looked up over at my desk and went, what spilled? I don't have water.
I guess it did the job then.
It startled me for a moment. That's kind of funny. All right, who wants to do a rip, read, and slab? I don't think we did one last week. So I got one set up. Let's see. What do we got here? 1951, September, DC Comics.
Ooh.
We got Adventure Comics, 170. Sensation Comics, 106. And Star Spangled Comics, 122. 1951. The Knights of Terror, Ghostbreaker,
Tough.
Lana Lang's Big Crush.
That's tough.
Lois Lane was around then. This is Superboy, right? That's why it's Lana Lang.
I know which one I want to read, but I'm not sure which of the other two I would slab and tear up.
I know which one I want to rip, but I don't know which do I slab and which do I read.
If you're just thinking of it sheerly for monetary gain, you probably want to slab Adventure Comics.
It's got Superboy in it.
Yeah, but I'm going to rip it because that cover is so boring.
Oh, come on. Lana Lang's Big Crush. And you're not interested in that?
No, because at the end of the day, turns out that he's her cousin or something, and that's just to make Clark jealous.
Slab Sensation, Reed Spangled, Rip Adventure.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
I can see where Gus is coming from on that.
Yeah. I'm indecisive about Sensation and Star Spangled. I could. Both covers are pretty interesting, although I think Star Spangled, that's a lot more work put into it. So yeah, I'm gonna slab Star Spangled and read Sensation, especially because I want to know a Wonder Woman defeats those knights in armor.
Robin the Boy Wonder and Tomahawk is in Star Spangled.
Never been a fan of Robin.
Neither have I. So I'm going to rip up Star Spangled. I'm going to slab Adventure. And I'm going to read Sensation.
I think I have to agree with Jared on this one.
I think that's the direction I'm going to go.
The only reason I'm slabbing Adventure is just for sheer monetary greed.
Which is your favorite logo?
Sensation.
Yeah, I think that might be it.
They're about even for me, really.
Star Spangled is too busy because you have the logos for all the featured characters.
Yeah, but notice Star Spangled and Adventure look quite similar. With the red comics underneath.
The logo's smaller on Star Spangled.
Yeah. I like that cover on Star Spangled, though. Shame to rip it up.
That's a harder one than most of them. For me, anyways.
Yeah. I'm kind of tempted to read Lana Lang's Big Crush. I want to see how she makes Superboy jealous.
The same way she doesn't in every other comic.
Look at that. She's blowing kisses right through his head. The hearts are coming out his ear.
Maybe he's an airhead.
I'm guessing he is.
She's giving him a refill.
September 1951. That's funny. I was just where's stop share?
The thing is, I don't know what they're putting in the water in Smallville, but it's removing all of the teenagers' hormones.
Trench coat looks good. Very few could draw that well. And yeah, I noticed that trench coat too. I liked it. But I was just thinking about this era because when was it? February? I think February 20th was the anniversary of George Russo's death. Worked with him in the Marvel bullpen. He went all the way back to the earliest issues of Batman.
All right.
He was the background artist on the early issues of Batman. I just got a copy of it this Christmas. I made a video. I think I borrowed Bob Wycheck's copy, like in 2017, I think it was. I made a video of what's the name of it? From Shadow to Light, a book about Mort Meskin. And Mort Meskin, of course, was a Golden Age artist. But I didn't know until I read this book. They have a little interview with George Russos, because George Russos was Mort Meskin's friend, and he shared a studio with him. I think it was in the mid to late 40s. And I think they shared a studio space down in the Village or the West Village down in New York City. And I always just find it fascinating, what it would be like to be working, to be, living in New York City in 1942 and working in comics.
And the rent is how much a month?
Yeah, not much.
Really?
I don't know if I ever told this story here, but my art history professor, Irving Sandler, is kind of like the official art historian of the abstract expressionists of the 50s. And the reason he was able to do that, he said, was in New York City in the 50s, he could work 10 hours a month and pay his rent.
I remember you telling me about that.
Right. That's how cheap rent was. So imagine that. It's like working in comics in the Matt, what must it have been like to be, 24 years old in 1942, drawing comics, which are kind of brand new. So you don't even know what they are yet. You're kind of making it up as you go along. I wish we had more reporting from that period.
Well, in 1942, you're just hoping you weren't going to get drafted.
Yeah, there is that. And World War II was going on. Even 1947, when George and Mort Meskin were sharing a studio in New York. The war was over. Boom times were coming.
Yeah.
At least here. Not so much in Europe.
I was going to bring up Gus's comment about the trench coat. Gus has a whole closet full of smoking jackets, doesn't he?
And they button every which way.
I can just see the fine velour contours draped over Gus's figure there. Backlit. But they got the buttons on the wrong side. So.
Let's see, what else do we have here this week? We've got the psychedelic Department of Truth.
That is indeed psychedelic.
And in this issue, we kind of get the origin of Lee Harvey Oswald. And there's lots of this is one of the best people on drugs getting stoned issue ever. When it comes to the artwork, it's just like there's. Let me get bigger and share it with you.
The origin. Lee Oswald was bitten by a radioactive Harvey.
There's just lots of this crazy psychedelic. And the storytelling really works, I have to say. Whoa, all of a sudden. And the storytelling really works because it's kind of like, oh man, I forgot there's another one. Woo! Like in this universe, in this world, if enough people believe in a conspiracy, it rewrites reality and the conspiracy becomes true. Well, I think what was happening to Lee Harvey Oswald in this was he was becoming true. It was like the everybody believing. There's one line in here that says, "Oh man, that's why he's stoned." You don't know if he's stoned or he's just kind of coming into this universe. He's like, I feel like I belong to everyone, and there's just a lot of that going on, and it's just, and it was one of the best drugged out issues I've read. Not that I've ever been drugged out myself, because I'm a teetotaler, but...
See, what would happen if that one had a gatefold cover? Or a gatefold exterior?
That'd really be wicked smart. But much better than last issue. I'm okay with both like Ice Cream Man and Department of Truth when they have issues that are clunkers, because they do such wild things, both of them, storytelling-wise. Right. Like last issue to me, Department of Truth was a clunker. But because there was just too much text in it, and it didn't integrate. Blah, blah, blah. But I'm okay with it. I will take a clunker every few issues if I get a good one like this, too, to go with it. So I'm all for the experimental nature of it. I just have to keep in mind that they're not all going to be successful. But that one was successful for me. I really enjoyed it. Has Department of Truth made its way over to Portugal yet, Paulo?
It won't.
It won't.
The good independent comics of the last 5 years, they're still going to make it to Europe in some limited format. But I predict that if Marvel and DC don't start changing the way they license their comics, American comics are going to lose ground on European stands. Okay. Because Marvel outsells everything else in terms of American comics. Mm-hmm. And what else arrives here? Arrives connected to Marvel. So without a Marvel, unless you have a knowledgeable editor wanting to take a stab at something, it's gonna be a long bet, but if not for that, they're just going to disappear. Manga already takes up too much space in European stores.
Okay.
And
American comics could lose even more space to them.
Yeah, it's more the question of translated editions. Because even though a lot of people speak English, they'd rather read the comic in their own language.
Right.
So if Marvel's licensing is very expensive right now, if they start dropping Marvel, the rest of the Americans won't have any way to get known.
Won't have any coattails to cling on to.
Right, and they started Marvel, or that's the thing. You started Marvel or DC before you become a successful indie writer or artist. Mm-hmm. But yeah, without the well-known brands, people aren't going to pay attention to the rest. They won't know the names, and they won't say, "Oh, I want to pick up this comic because it's by a writer so and so."
Right. I wonder how those 6x9 Marvel Masterworks are doing. Have you seen those?
Not yet. 6x9 is an interesting format.
Yeah, the manga size. So I assume they're there to compete with manga. But I don't know anywhere they are. I don't know anything about them really, because they're definitely not for hardcore fans like us. We don't want 6x9 versions of
We want 16 by 19 versions.
Yeah, they're making those, that's for sure. These giant books they're making.
I'm all for the bigger book. Oh,
Lemire being not only
yeah, we got we have Remender, but the rest not so much.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, if a graphic novel collecting a run or a story arc from an American comic sells 1,000 copies, let's pop open that bottle of champagne.
Okay.
It's getting to that point here.
Of course, they won't be able to afford champagne.
Right, that's true. It'd be cheap beer. Jared, do you remember a few weeks ago we were talking about Eric Powell and you wanted to see him do more hillbilly?
Yeah.
He's doing an anthology book.
Oh.
The Albatross, Funny, Exploding, whatever the title is going to have the Goon and Hillbilly. And some other things he's working on too.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check that one out.
So yeah, I was looking at it like, it's got the Goon, it's got the Hillbilly, it's Eric Powell.
Yeah.
Sign me up. You know?
Sign me up.
No, just it makes me wonder if it'll make it take longer for each issue to come out. I'm not assuming it will, but
yeah, I don't know how fast he is. I have no idea. I've never heard.
I'm not sure. I don't know if what limits his speed is his actual working speed or having to run the company.
I was just speaking of working fast. I was just looking at that Mort Meskin book.
Mm-hmm.
Before we were on, I was just kind of looking through it, reading a paragraph here or there. And they had, I was reading part of the George Russo section.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 47 that Meskin had left DC or couldn't go back to DC from whatever. I can't remember why now. But he started working in Simon and Kirby's studio.
Mm-hmm.
And he was watching, he was talking about Jack Kirby working, and he was like, Jack Kirby was fast, but you never saw him move fast. It was just that he had such powers of concentration. He could start on the top of one page, chaos going on around him, whatever happened, he'd just work on that page, get it finished, put it aside, start on the top of the next page, work on that, put it aside. And he said, it wasn't that he was really fast. It said his powers of concentration were so good.
It was just
things wouldn't distract him.
He was constant.
Yeah. He wasn't fast. He was constant. And it was just amazing. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
I would like to bottle up what Kirby had for speed and give it to Mark Schultz. Here, Mark,
hello there, sleepy reader.
Please do some more books quickly. Hello, Damien.
Schultz would have been happier working in Europe.
Yeah.
He still gets to own the stuff, although there will be an editor ringing him every day. Where's the art?
Well, I mean, he has a publisher now that has more of that what's the word I'm looking for? The publishing plan that's going to suit his needs.
Yeah, it's all about the money. How does he do enough pages to make enough books to make enough money to
he
make
sells,
a living? That's always the tough part.
For obscene amounts of money.
Yeah. But still, that's always the tough part for these guys who take a long time.
Every once in a while, he'll teach some classes at SCAD down in Atlanta.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Let's see another comic I got this week. Monstrous, issue 37. Those eyes stare. And we actually got some explanation and answers in this issue.
What?
Which is
unusual.
Yeah, we haven't. I wonder if it's worse now if artists focus with the internet as it is from. Oh, yeah, good question.
I imagine it's a bit of both. It'd be a blessing and a curse.
I'm lucky in that I've always been. My powers of concentration are good. Maybe not Kirby good, but as one of my classmates once observed, you can work easily in the middle of chaos, which I could. So my powers of concentration are good. But I've seen others who get distracted easily. So it's a good question.
Depends on what you're doing too.
Like I don't get distracted by the internet. So the internet to me, when I want to take a break, go over to the internet, and it's like sitting around the office water cooler. Then I go back and do work in a few minutes. Yeah, but Monster, we finally found out sort of a bit about the nature of, because this whole story is about, this big fantasy world where there's all sorts of sides and a war. For the first, 25 issues, the war was brewing. And then, like, after issue 25, the war actually started. But the main character is this woman, Marika, the half wolf. Her mother used to be some big character in this world, but she's dead now. And Marika has one of the old gods, monsters, that lives inside her, hence the name Monstrous. And we've never known much about it. There's always been hints about what the monster is, but in this issue we get sort of the backstory of the monster and the type of people they are. And it was pretty interesting in that there's some, I won't go through the whole backstory, but these monsters were once these creatures of light. They don't appear as they do now. There's some hint, but they were once these creatures made completely of light, living in this faraway planet, and things happened to them that dragged them to this planet. But it was interesting to actually get the backstory on the monster.
That cover reminds me so much of the scene in Clash of the Titans where you see Medusa.
Ah, yes.
Those eyes really remind me of Medusa from that Harryhausen movie.
Mm-hmm. Peering at us. And once again, it looks, see if we get the wavy, it looks oversaturated.
Right.
Look at that waviness.
I mean, it almost looks like corrugated cardboard there.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well. Stupid Photoshop's default black, and the printer says you can use it. But yeah, Monstrous is one of those titles that's just been solid all the way through. Good stuff. My time management is declining rapidly. That's because Sleepy Reader retired. So.
See, you're getting back to being immortal. That's how long I'm going to have to live to read all the books I have.
Sleepy Reader's a gentleman of leisure now, so he's going to have to figure out how to dole out his time in a different way.
Maybe he can borrow a couple of those smoking jackets from Gus.
Go to a country club, play some whist.
Play some polo.
Oh, I think he's a cribbage guy.
I really don't get exactly how to win at cribbage.
I used to know.
Never played cribbage.
Back in college, I learned to play cribbage.
Oh, we played hearts and spades like nobody's business back in college.
It's rolling dice and moving pegs, but I could never find anyone to play with. I played with them maybe only a few times.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Cribbage.
Yeah, we played a lot of games back in college.
I didn't. I never had a gaming group. Like some people have a gaming group that they get together with 4 or 5 people.
Yeah, we had a whole club there at the college that we did.
Has pipes to go with the smoking jacket, of course. Even Comic Crack.
But are they bubble pipes or are they real pipes? Or is it
regular
like Popeye corn cob pipe?
This is very much a 2-pipe problem. Let's see, what else did I get? Usagi Yojimbo, Lone Goat and Kid, issue 2 of 6.
I'll have to preface this by welcome to the weekly meeting of the YouTube Usagi Yojimbo fan club.
Yeah. And this issue was different in that first he tells you the story of a kite maker, the kite maker's tale.
Right.
and he goes through.
Call this meeting. Bang, bang.
Comic Crack calls this meeting to order.
You need to use Saga gavel.
And he goes through. It's what 6 or 7 pages here of how they made kites in ancient Japan.
Yeah.
And this one worker was making this giant kite, his biggest project ever. And it doesn't tie in. It doesn't tie into Usagi at all.
Think about trying to describe the idea to like an 8-year-old of having a comic book where somebody in feudal Japan is making a kite.
Yeah.
And the average 8-year-old's eyes is going to glaze over. But no, it's good. It's interesting. He makes it interesting.
About 30 nice briar pipes. Don't smoke them very often nowadays.
Gotcha.
Now we say if you're still smoking in your 40s, you've got a real addiction. If you're still smoking in your 50s, you've got a death wish. So if you're 50 and over and smoking, you've got a death wish. Let's just face it.
If you're still smoking in your 90s, then...
Well, then you beat the odds. You may as well smoke.
Yeah.
And the second story is called The Gambler's Tale. It's about this cheating gambler who, a few pages in, Usagi reveals, and the rest of the gambling house chases him out of town. And then we get the story of Usagi versus more gamblers, the town folk. Usagi is all of a sudden integrated into it. But a very sort of different Usagi tale in this one. Very nice. Still no Lone Goat and Kid, because I think that was only 2 issues, the Lone Goat and Kid.
Are they keeping the colors the same from issue to issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's coloring it now? Rhonda Pattison. Yeah, it's usually colored.
Oh, yeah, she used to color Atomic Robo back in the day.
Okay. Yep, no, mostly flat colors with a little hint of airbrush here and there, but not dramatic airbrush, just kind of subtle airbrush.
All right.
Good stuff. Usagi's always good, as we know. As I show an issue every 2 weeks, I think, between the reprint and the new one.
All right.
And I have to say, Sleepy Reader didn't like the second part of the regular Usagi book as much because, and he thinks it was because he didn't know the backstory. I really liked the last issue. That was the one I said that was really creepy.
Uh-huh.
I really enjoyed the creepiness of it, and I think Sleepy Reader didn't get the creepiness. Because he didn't know who Jay was, even though it was drawn real creepy, he didn't know who Jay was, that demon-like character they had.
None of us had like an undead quality to him.
2 and 3 smokers die. The other one becomes immortal.
The other 2 die because their heads were chopped off by a sword.
But if that happens, don't go to issue 2 in that series.
Usagi.
Has there ever been a Highlander comic book?
Ooh, I don't know. Was there a movie adaptation? I have a vague memory of a movie adaptation, but it could just be fake. I don't remember.
I'm not sure.
If Now Comics in the early 90s didn't do it, then it probably wasn't done.
Well, they did the Terminator. I remember that.
Yeah. I have the artist edition of the Terminator RoboCop.
Oh, wow.
That's the only one.
Who did the artwork on that?
That was, I think, Walt Simonson with Frank Miller writing.
Oh, I remember that. Once you said Walt Simonson, I remember those RoboCop covers that he did.
And
I had forgot. I hadn't thought of those in years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's extra wide.
Just like me.
It's extra wide because
I like that.
Let me see if I can show you a couple of them. There's Walter's art in there, but let me show you. No, it was. Well, I actually, Walter told me this story. The problem was when he did this, the original series, there was no kind of standards. Like Marvel and DC always gave their artists blue-lined paper.
Right.
That way, the artist knew exactly what size to do it.
Mm-hmm.
This, I think, was ending. It was going to be a slightly different size, and Walter didn't have. He didn't know what size to make it. So with the bleeds and things, like if you look here, how the bleed goes all the way off the side of the paper here.
Yeah.
With those bleeds and stuff, he didn't know how much bleed to give it, so he gave it extra bleed on the side, just in case. Because, like I said, he didn't know what the dimensions were for the book they were printed, the exact dimensions.
So he needed a tourniquet.
So he was being safe and giving extra stuff
Right.
on the sides. The problem was the production guy then got it. And he didn't want to cut off any of the artwork.
Right.
Because he didn't want to get in trouble. Obviously, this is me speculating, the production guy. He didn't want to get in trouble for cutting off this artwork that he did. So he shrunk the pages down. So in the original printing of RoboCop versus Terminator, some of the pages are shrunk down to fit the bleed into it. Or sometimes he had lettering going off the side. Once again, he just made it go way off the side because he didn't know where the end of the bleed was. Can
you imagine Walton seeing this for the first time? He's like, what the hell did they do?
But that's why they had to make this artist edition extra wide, because they wanted to put all that bleed in that he put in.
I'd like to see a Craig Russell book with those dimensions.
But I actually
wider.
Yeah, but I actually told Walt. But I said we were having lunch with Walt, and he was discussing this with me once. And he's like, I know exactly what that production. He's like, I don't know what happened. The guy shrunk. I don't know why he shrunk it down. I'm like, Walt, he did not want to get in trouble for cutting off your artwork. That I know. I know exactly. I know exactly why that happened. This kid was like, I'm not cutting off the sides of Walt's artwork.
All right.
Yeah, that's why Stan Lee didn't hire Jim Shooter back in 1968, because he gave Shooter some Kirby pages to ink. And I'm not going to mess with Kirby's artwork, but he was supposed to fix it. Stan told him to fix it.
All right.
I can remember when my friend Ed worked in Topps Comics, and they had him art correcting Walt Simonson dinosaur heads. And Ed, he was like, what? What?
That's just wrong.
I know. He's like, they were perfectly fine.
That's just wrong.
Take a shot after Jim Shooter.
Just the idea of correcting a Walt Simon.
Yeah, I know. It's nuts.
Makes me,
But Walter expected it, right? He expected that it was going to be cut.
Yeah, he expected it to be cut.
Because that's what you do with the bleeds.
That's what you do with the bleed. You cut it off where it's supposed to bleed.
Right.
But the production guy, I'm sure, like, this is me speculating because I've done this. The production guy was like, I don't want to get in trouble for cutting off Walter's. What if he meant for it to be there? And there was no oversight somehow.
So you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't.
I know, because I have to do, even in today's digital age, doing production. Sometimes I have to figure out, because often the artists, I'll get the artist's raw scans. And some of them you can figure out, and now I have to make it I have to take their raw scans, which are often at original art size, whatever size they drew it at,
Right.
and I have to make it print size. Most of the time it's easy enough, because they put, if like the blue line on all the paper tells you where everything is, but that doesn't exist in the scans now. The blue line drops out of the scans.
Sure.
But usually there's like a copy safe area. Like if you look at an old 1960s comic with no bleeds in it whatsoever,
Right.
that's the copy safe area. You put your borders on the edge, half an inch in from the actual printed book. And most guys still they'll put their borders on the edge of the copy safe area. And it's easy to figure out. Like I would say 4 out of 5 artists, I can look at the scan of their page and I know just how to set it up. I'm like, okay, there's the copy. Blah, 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 blah. That 5th artist, they do things so weird. It's like, okay, what size is this supposed to be? What's supposed to bleed off? What's not supposed to bleed? I have to. It's like a puzzle. I have to figure it out.
Right.
Because they just do. And then I had to explain this to. There's 3 lines on a comic book page. There's the copy safe area. That's where your main comic is.
No.
That is where the printer promises you if everything goes wrong, everything in the copy safe area will print. Then there's the bleed, which is, the bleed is if you want the art to go all the way off the page, you have to draw it all the way off the page. And then there's the that's the outside. Then there's the trim. In between the bleed and the copy safe area is the trim. And that's where the paper gets trimmed.
Right.
There are some guys who put the panel borders right on the trim. And it's like that panel border might print, it might not print.
No.
But that's the way they say. I don't know why they want it that way, but that's the way they want it. And like we were printing one of these bad idea books. I had to explain this because the printer was like, what's going on here? We don't have enough bleed. And it wasn't even like panel border with some cut. It was like white around the panel border, and it was right on the trim. And the printer was like, we don't have enough bleed for this area. And, my editor calls me. I was like, what's going on? What's not bleed? And I had to explain to him, no, that's where the artist wants it. And he's like, and it's an artist he's been working with for years. He's like, okay, he knows what he's doing. If that's what but I can't figure that out. Why would you want to put a panel border right where it might trim off? It might not trim off. Right. It's weird. But like I said, and that's the same thing since Walt went kind of outside whatever the norm was, that production guy just panicked.
Yeah.
Said, I'm not cutting anything off. What year did RoboCop Terminator come out? Was that the early 90s or the mid 90s?
I'm thinking early 90s, like 92, 93,
Okay.
somewhere.
So that was probably
I really don't know.
Yeah, that was before.
I'm terrible with years, unless you're talking like, I remember 1066 was when the Battle of Hastings took place.
Me too.
1980 was when Back in Black came out. We landed on the moon in 1969. After that,
Twilight came out in 1990.
As to what year? I can usually pin the decade, but the year. Not so much.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I think that was pre-digital everything. So. I don't know how they were doing things at Dark Horse.
Well, I got to go back and find it, but Wheezy was writing a webcomic about. There's a story about a minstrel in the Middle Ages called Blondel, which was tied into when Richard the Lionheart was coming back from the Third Crusade. He was taken prisoner. And Prince John and Philip of France kind of funneled money so he would be kept prisoner. Okay. So he wouldn't come back and take his lands back, which is exactly what he did when he got back to England.
Right.
But she was doing a webcomic based on that. And I need to go back and look at that and see if she's done any new ones.
I have about 4 or 5 webcomics that I read, that I check every morning and see if there's a new one up. I don't think I've gone out and looked for new webcomics in a while.
Gosh, I used to read several that I've just kind of lost track of over the years. I used to read Girl Genius on a regular basis.
Okay.
done by
I
I
still have an RSS feed reader that I'm like one of the last people using one of those.
No, I still got I love my Feedly, man.
Yeah, Feedly. That's the one that's
Feedly, not the new version.
Feedly is like the last man standing too when it comes to RSS feed.
Yeah, I do like my Feedly. There was a few others I used to have. I kind of lost track of them over the years, but there was a few that I used to follow on a regular basis.
I still read, was it Least I Could Do? I still read, what's the name of it? Girls with Slingshots, even though it's in repeats now.
I haven't read that in a long time.
Yeah.
The Devil's Panties, I read that one. And I read, there's one other. What's the name of that one? Hold on. Let me go to my... Some don't have feeds. SP and Other Comics. And I read Foxtrot on Sundays.
Yeah.
And I still read Doonesbury every day, even though that's in repeats too, except for Sundays.
I still read Pennsylvania, but now I usually complain about the coloring on it.
Nah.
The only comic strip I still read is The Phantom. Right now, when it comes to web comics, I'm still reading something called Drive. It's a science fiction humor thing, 1 page a week.
Okay. And I still read my own web comic.
Right. The guy who does Drive, Dave Kellett, he also has something with called Sheldon, about a 10-year-old web developer.
I remember that one.
But that hasn't really had any new stories in a while. Every once in a while, he puts out some new stuff about pugs, which is what he likes.
And I also read, what's the name of that?
And I read something called Darts and Droids, made by a couple of Australians. One of them used to have a Lego comic, but this one, Darts and Droids, uses stills from the Star Wars movies, and it's set up like it's all of the dialogue is set up like it's a campaign in a role-playing game, because the Star Wars universe does not exist in that webcomic.
Gotcha.
Oh, Ogloff. That's the other one I read.
That one sounds familiar.
Ogloff. It's a there's lots of sex in that one. It's a
okay. It's not what I was thinking then.
It's a rated X comic strip, comedy comic strip, I guess you'd call it. OGLAF exclamation point. That one I think runs on Sundays, and it's nuts. It's really, really well drawn and really, really dirty.
Does Scott McCloud still do stuff online?
I don't know. I haven't seen the Sculptor was the last thing I saw of his, and I haven't heard anything.
Last thing I remember, other than seeing some newer published versions of his 3 basic books that he had.
Yeah.
Do you remember something called Astounding Space Thrills?
Yeah, Steve Conley.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that thing starter for like a compilation of a storyline that he did that I think came out in print instead of just.
Yeah, I know it from print. Is it a web comic too?
It started as a web comic.
Okay.
There was it wasn't a spin-off, but it was made by a friend of his, the Crater Kid. I also used to. I read that back in 98, 99.
I forgot about that.
Wow. That's a while ago.
Yeah, it's over 20 years ago. And I used to read one of the original comic strips of the internet, user-friendly.
Was the Crater Kid was that done by the same guy that did the Hero Bear?
Hero Bear and the Kid? Might be.
Is it Andy Kunkel?
Andy Kunkel?
Why does that name stick in my back of my head? I don't know.
I don't remember if Andy Kunkel did Crater Kid. I don't remember who did Crater Kid.
The guy we were just talking about, Steve Conley, does another webcomic now called Middle Age, which is evidently a lot more popular than his other books were.
You never know what's going to be popular.
Right.
You can become an overnight success real late in life.
Sometimes it takes a long time to become an overnight success.
Yeah. Let's see, the last comic I got for this week was Impossible Jones #3. And this was just fun.
Mhm.
It's and I think Sleepy Reader said he got a hardcover Kickstarter of this. I don't know if it's the same material or different because he got it once. I don't know if they're reprinting that stuff by Scout Comics. Carl Kessel, David Hahn is drawing it. Tony Avinya, there's a little accent over the end, is on the colors, and Comic Craft is doing the letters, and it's just fun. It's superhero stuff. The closest I could say it is Mike Allred kind of stuff.
Okay.
But these guys clearly like superheroes. You know, of course, Carl Kessel has been working in superheroes for years. And it's like they got their own, besides Impossible Jones, there's like another dozen superheroes in this book.
Gotcha.
Like one of them reminds me of Mr. A by Ditko, except his name is Even Steven. And he'll only
clever. I like that, actually.
He'll only fight you on an even level. And so if you have a knife, he manifests a knife. If you drop your knife, his knife is gone. So he's like he's like a very black and white character, like Mr. A.
Mr. A.
He's like, no, you are fighting unfair. So
I found Mr. A very hard to read.
Well, that's because it can be. Yeah. And then she's kind of like a Plastic Man type character. She's rubbery, but she just got her powers. She's figuring them out. Oh, and this guy here is cool. He can telekinetically control knives. What do they call him? The Prince of Knives now?
I couldn't see much of the artwork there, but is that kind of like
the Saint of Knives?
The same style that what was his name? Bat and Lash did. The two Wolf and Bird.
I haven't seen much Wolf and Bird. Yeah. It's very sort of clean lined. These guys look like they worked in animation or something.
Okay, gotcha.
But like the closest I can say to it is Allred, Mike Allred, but it doesn't really have that Mike Allred style. The line is always pretty. The faces are always on model. Right. That's how I can tell when guys worked in animation.
Consistency, yeah.
There's such a consistency to matter of fact, sometimes that's a drawback in comics.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I could see.
Well, the place I find it a drawback in comics is medium shots, long shots, and close-ups are all drawn differently in comics. Mm-hmm. The animation guys, when they're close-up, when you see a close-up, it's all the same lines that you see in a medium shot. They're just bigger. And it's like that's not usually how comics are done. Usually when you do a close-up in comics, you can see a little more detail.
Sure.
The drawing is just kind of done differently than a medium shot where you use little marks for things. As something gets bigger, it kind of gets clearer. Mm-hmm. But with the animation guys, it's the same clarity, medium shot,
right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Lefty Blues nailed the book I was thinking about earlier. It's called Hero Bear and the Kid by Mike Kunkel.
Hero Bear and Kid by Mike Kunkel.
That's the one I was thinking about.
Kunkel went on to do Billy Batson and the Magic of Shazam. Have you ever read Jeff Smith's Shazam?
Yeah.
No, I haven't read it. I've seen it, but I haven't read it.
That's pretty solid.
Yeah. I mean, anything Jeff Smith writes is going to be solid. But...
Yeah, I got that one by accident. No, sort of by accident. This is, I don't know, 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. When DC was coming out with a printing of the original Captain Marvel and the Monster Society of Evil from like the 50s, 40s, whenever it came out. Mm-hmm. Right. Which Eric Larson says isn't that good, by the way. But DC was supposedly coming out with a new printing of it.
Mhm.
So I ordered it from my local comic shop. They
Yeah.
never came out with it, but they came out with Jeff Smith's Monster Society of Evil. And so they ordered me that one by accident because the other one never came out. And he's like, and I'm like, well, this isn't the one I ordered. And he's like, he's like, well, do you want it for cost? I said, sure. So he gave it to me for whatever it cost, because they weren't going to sell it to anyone.
Yeah. I saw he's doing a second volume of Tukey.
Okay, that's right. I think it's going to. He's in my RSS feed, but it's all like little ads for stuff. I still have it in a flip book by company.
There was another book I liked too. It was I can't remember. It was similar to Hero Bear. That was called Akiko.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
I can't remember the creator's name now.
I may have one issue of that somewhere.
I liked it. I can't. Oh, it's going to drive me crazy. It's kind of in a similar vein, but I liked it.
Do you remember Boris the Bear?
Oh yeah, I love Boris the Bear.
Oh, what is this? Sky Captain hardcover, soft cover.
That is the breaking book that is 7 years late. That has pissed me off. I still don't believe it till I see it with my own eyes. It has to be in physical form. Yeah, it was Mark Crowley. I forgot about that. I've been wanting to see that Art of Sky Captain book ever since originally solicited 7 years ago. Nah, we keep pushing it back.
He does them.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah. He's like another one of those creators I used to follow that is kind of lost track of.
Said without a pull list, these guys are easy to lose track of. Even with a pull list, if they keep changing series.
Right. I wish Linda Medley would start doing Castle Waiting again.
Yeah, I wonder what she's doing. Haven't seen anything from her in years.
I don't know. She's done some.
I imagine she just had to find other work because comics didn't pay well enough. That's why I figure everybody.
Yeah, that is a problem.
Isn't doing comics. Anybody who's not doing comics anymore, I assume that's the reason.
I'd say you're right about 99.998% of the time.
I think he has a YouTube channel as well, doesn't he? Mark Crowley.
Yeah. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody wants to send me that Sky Captain book to prove to me that it exists, I will be glad to.
Go right ahead. Yeah.
But I've got
accepting donations.
Like every 2 years they solicit it, and then he just jerk that rug out from me under again. I was like, I've been teased too many times, man.
You'll have to see.
I still think I'm only one of 4 people in the world that actually like that movie.
I've never seen it, so.
It's not Shakespeare at all, but it's a love letter to pulp science fiction from the 30s.
Yeah, it's more about the visuals. The story's pretty forgettable.
I like the story. Now, granted, it's not.
Yeah.
A lot of it pulls also, too, the Max Fleischer Superman cartoons were a big influence on it. If you look at the robots in the movie, you can tell, hey, this is where they came from.
I watched that. Speaking of the visuals were good, but the story was I watched that Peter Jackson documentary on World War I.
See, I had heard nothing but good about that. Everybody that I ever heard anything about just raved about it, so it's fantastic.
I think it's for people who've never seen a documentary on World War I. It's kind of very basic.
Fair enough. That makes sense.
I'm not saying it's bad, but it's very basic. The footage was the best. They upscaled all that footage, and
I see what you mean. So it's the visual content is great, but the actual. Yeah.
But if you know anything about World War I, you don't really learn anything in this.
Okay, gotcha.
But for people who don't know anything about World War I, I'm sure they'd like it.
What was the name of that movie about World War I? It was on like one continuous take.
That was the Peter Jackson did 1917.
Is that the same one?
I think so. I think he did them both at the same time.
Oh, okay.
I turned that movie off about, I don't know, 3/4 of the way in. I was just like, I can't take it anymore. It just got boring.
Here's my take on Sky Captain, and everybody else will probably get bored about it. It's got everything I like in it. Well, not everything, but most things. It's got rocket ships. It's got dinosaurs. It's got a P-40 Warhawk from World War II. It's got ray guns. It's got giant robots. It's got giant robots with tentacles for arms. It's got Angelina Jolie in black leather. You have a flying, basically a shield helicarrier, and very Wally-Wood-looking fighter planes that go underwater. What else do you need? You need a story, granted. But
he tells us Sam Mendes directed 1917. Did Peter Jackson produce it? Because I think that like Peter Jackson's documentary somehow came out of that. I thought it had something to do with that movie. I can't remember. Because the only way they could restore all that footage, pay all the money to restore that footage, was tie it in with a major Hollywood movie.
Right.
Giant monster. Yeah, P-40 is probably the most beautiful airplane ever. No, the most beautiful airplane ever is a P-38 Lockheed Lightning, dual-bodied. I always liked that one best as a kid.
You're going to get so many people with different arguments. The P-51, to me, it's the Corsair. Any of the major fighters from World War II, the Spitfire. I mean, that's a freaking classic.
I just always thought the dual body looked cool. That's all it was.
It does look
cool. It had a cool name, the Lockheed Lightning.
Well, it's just called the Lightning, but Lockheed manufacturer.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, giant monsters improve a lot of movies. I could think of a lot of movies that have been better if they'd had a giant monster in them. Also, if you would fit both Madeline Kahn and Marty Feldman in a movie, it instantly becomes better.
Jackson created a lot of camera effects stuff from Tintin, and going forward, a lot of motion capture stuff too.
I actually liked Tintin.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people that don't. They can't get over the Uncanny Valley thing. But I liked it.
There was some of that going on in the 1917 movie because it was upscaled and they had to add stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's sometimes a strange shimmering to it, right. But most of it was pretty well done. The Hobbit was 84 frames per second instead of the regular. Yeah, I'd heard that at 64 instead of 24. I have no idea what that would look like.
That wasn't the major problem with the movie, though.
Yeah.
Have you seen all this controversy about the upcoming Amazon Lord of the Rings series?
But they moved it out of New Zealand. I know that was controversial. I don't know what else.
That's not real. The real controversy is basically what side of the fence do you fit on? Do you like anything that comes out that's Tolkien related?
Uh-huh.
Or do you get called a gatekeeper and a racist because you realize what they're doing is actually fan fiction?
It's all fan fiction to me. If you're any franchise is fan fiction. That's what it is, you know? If you're not the original guy doing it, it's fan fiction.
Right.
Tintin was great. Really disappointed there was never a follow-up.
Makes it look like a video. Wanted to do a follow-up. No,
there was
now, but
they were supposed to do a movie with the trip to the moon, as well as the Tintin trip to the moon.
That's right.
Captain Haddock was kind of a late addition to the Tintin mythos. It doesn't show up in the first 6 books, I think.
It's amusing if they put the Thompson twins in the soundtrack.
Do hold me now and my life high.
Thompson twins going through my head. The 4th album, because the first 3 are the ones that don't count. Tintin in the Land of the Soviets, Tintin in America, and Tintin in Congo.
They don't count. He was just warming up in those.
Yeah, and
there's some
no, he wasn't warming up yet. He was just making stuff up. And look, Tintin in America has two things: gangsters and cowboys.
Ah, that sounds
That's what
perfect.
America
What more
is.
do you need?
Yeah.
What more do you need in any story but gangsters and cowboys?
You need a giant squid.
Beings of pure light.
Those two.
A giant squid will improve any movie featuring Ben Stiller. The giant squid kills and eats Ben Stiller.
You know, we had a running joke a few years ago that Ben Stiller had kind of replaced Michael Caine in that he was in every single movie that came out that year, except for like 2 midget porn movies. And the only reason he wasn't there that day is because he was sick.
I like Ben Stiller movies in general.
Every freaking movie that came out that year. Yeah.
Haddock is one of the first anti-heroes. Drunk, badly tempered, but a heart of gold.
Yes.
Heart of gold.
Mil sabor. Oh, you have to yell it. Mil million de mil sabor.
I'm going to file these away in my Jose Garcia Lopez section.
You have a separate section for him?
That is something I picked up from Bob Wyachek, who I started doing it in they're doing it with my collection too, like 10, 15 years ago when I saw his collection.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are certain comics you only have because of the artist.
There's a bunch I have just because of the artist.
Yeah. So it's like, it's better to file them in that artist's own file. Now, if you have like a run of Avengers, you could leave it in with the Avengers. But if I have like a George Perez section that's got other stuff, George Perez stuff that I got here and there only because George, like his Black Widow story that they reprinted a couple of times now from Marvel Fanfare. I know that's in my George Perez section.
Yeah, I have some bookshelves set up like that. Where like, here's all my Kaluta books. Here's all
right. Same thing, only with comics.
Schultz books, right?
But I never thought of doing that for comics until I saw his collection. And I was like, because whenever he'd want to reference some artist, he'd go over and go to his, John Byrne section and pull a couple of John Byrne books.
That's why I always liked those books that Fantagraphics did that were, based on the artist.
Yeah. You can put them in their own. That way you can just go, I want some Kriegstein. Here we go. Here's all the Wally Wood DC stuff. Oh, okay. Yep. That works.
I wish more publishers would do compilations like that are based on the artists. Well, he's done a few, but not many.
I'm thinking omnibuses are so writer specific now.
Right.
That I don't know if they do it.
Like DC did the Norm Brayfogle Batman book.
Right.
They did an Archie Goodwin book, but some writers,
They did. I think they did Walter Simonson. Do I have it back there? Batman.
I don't remember that one, but
yeah. Marshall Rogers, Dark Knight.
Right.
I got Marshall Rogers, Dark Knight.
I just wish more publishers would do compilations of that nature.
Yeah, Archie Goodwin Batman I've got back there.
That's actually got my favorite Batman story ever in it.
Yeah.
The one that it's called Heroes. They actually did a motion comic of it, but it was in the Batman Black and White series.
Oh, okay.
And it takes place in the 30s, and Gary Gianni drew it.
And my favorite, the one that stands out for me, but in the Black and White one, I haven't read it in 20 years, but I still remember it. The Jose Munoz Batman story that was in Batman Black and White. I really liked that one.
I like the one that Kevin Nolan did too.
Yeah. There's a lot of good. That's also because DC had a series called Solo. That was, I remember that.
Yeah, I like those.
I think both Solo and Black and White were edited by Mark Chiarello, DC's longtime art director. So that's why those books are so good.
Yeah, when he got part of the Purge, I was sorry to hear that because he was really good at what he did. He's a nice guy too.
Yeah,
I met him once or twice.
All right. Well, we should sign off now. It's about that time. Fun talking again.
Now Paolo can go take a nap, and I'll probably
nap
be
time for
a couple
Paolo.
hours behind. Yeah.
Do you have to go to work tomorrow, Paolo?
But I only have one day off. I work Sunday and I have a new schedule. So I moved to the 7 a.m., 4 p.m.
And when you get out the day before?
4 p.m. No, today I got out at midnight. Tomorrow I don't work. And then I start at Sunday at 7 a.m.
Good to see you too, Terrence. We'll catch you later.
Yeah.
We'll catch everyone else later and see you on the rewind. Ta-ta, cheerio, pip-pip, and all that rot.
Sayonara.